Chapter 377. The onlookers outside, after the initial panic, gradually began to rejoice in other people's misfortune, especially those concubines of Prince Kong. No matter if they were in opposition to Yao Rao or fawning on her to survive. In fact, the more they flattered her, the happier they were in their heart at this moment. They all depended on the same man to survive. His favor determined their status. There were so many concubines in the harem, but Yao Rao monopolized more than half of his favor. As for the rest, some people couldn't even get a little bit in 2 or 3 months. How could they not be jealous? Sometimes, when it was easy to get some soup and water, they were intercepted halfway. How many things were thrown, and how many handkerchiefs were torn. They believed that their beauty and talent were not inferior to Yao Rao. How could she after this incident, even if Prince Kong didn't kill her? They didn't believe that he could still favor her like before. It was like a woman who was born in prostitution. No matter how dissolute she was, once she turned over a new leaf, she couldn't have any relationship with a man other than her husband. Even if she was only seen, but not touched, it was still an unforgivable sin. Yao Rao was exactly like this. This was not only related to her innocence, but also related to Prince Kang's face. If Prince Kong could still take it lightly in the face of such a situation, probably everyone would praise him as good tolerance. Prince Kang's side concubine glanced at Jingwan thoughtfully, but she didn't ask. Anyway, she never thought highly of Li Hongyi and never cared about him. She never thought of having a child of her own, not only for the sake of her sister's child, but also because she didn't want to give birth to that man's child. Every time she talked about having a child, her family would say that she was sensible and considerate. In fact, it was a joke. They said that when the child grew up in the future, he would be filial to her and treat her as his biological mother. She would be the most honorable woman in the world. Although they didn't say it, the meaning was obvious. In fact, she wanted to say that they thought too much. Even if Li Hongyi ascended to that position, he wouldn't be able to hold it for long. In the end, his end would be countless times more miserable than not sitting directly. Moreover, there were some things that were said by their own people, but who knew how many times other people had said it? Thinking about it, it was meaningless. No one knew who could really reach that step. Maybe it was an unknown person, or maybe it was the most unexpected person. She had raised her sister's child with all her heart, and that was enough. It could be said that she had fulfilled their sisterhood. If there was a next life, they did not want to be sisters anymore. As for other things, whether the child she raised would be filial to her, it did not matter. She did not care at all. Among the people present, the one who had the biggest reaction was Prince Kang's valet, who was trembling like a sieve. Not only did he fail to complete the task assigned to him, but he also made such a scene. He could already imagine the scene where his master, in a rage, cut him into pieces. All that was left in his mind were these, over and over again. The gate of Prince Kang's Fu was blocked by the guards of Prince Kang's Fu, so even if they wanted to go out through the gate to report, they could forget about it. But other gates were not a problem. After all, when Jingwan did this, she didn't think that she would come and quietly leave, and then wait for Prince Kong to go to Prince Jin Fu to find trouble. It was better to solve trouble in other people's homes. Therefore, Jingwan was calmly waiting for Prince Kong to come back. Jingwan's current reputation as a jealous woman was quite big. Even Prince Kang's Si Fei, who did not leave the house, had heard about it. Once, Gong Qin Wangfei was considered one of the more powerful daughters-in-law of the imperial family, but compared to the current prince consort of Jin, she was really a small child in the presence of a great sorcerer. They were not on the same level. After all, the things that Gong Qin Wangfei did were far from being cleaned up in one go. She only flipped out in her own backyard, and to the outside, she still had to whitewash it. This one was happy and fearless even when everyone knew about it. Now that she did such a heinous thing in Prince Kang's Fu, she still had a smile on her face, without the slightest bit of a guilty conscience, as if what she did was nothing more than eating and drinking. On the other side, a guard of Prince Kang's Fu rushed to the 9th Wangye's Fu at the fastest speed. On this kind of day, he was drenched in sweat. When he was brought in, all the adult princes were present. Beauties accompanied them as they drank and chatted merrily. Of course, not everyone had a beauty by their side. When Prince Kong saw that the guards in his mansion were still panting and anxious, he felt that he had lost face for a moment. His face darkened in an instant. How can you be so flustered? What a scandal. The guard calmed his breathing. Wang Ye, that Jin Wang Fei. He subconsciously glanced at Li Hongyuan. Everyone understood in their hearts. 8 or 9 out of 10. It was Jin Wang Fei making trouble again. They all looked at Li Hongyuan with a smile. Although they did not show it on their faces, they were ridiculing him in their hearts. On the other hand, Li Hongyuan was still the same, drinking happily and contentedly without the slightest fluctuation in his mood. Although he still did not know what his wife did, he was very clear in his heart that if this matter was exposed, the one who would be laughed at would not be him. From the looks of it, it should be quite serious. Li Hongyuan only felt gratified. It was not in vain for him to sit here and wait for a good show. After all, if it was in the past, even if he went to a certain brother's appointment, it would be good if he could give face and drink 2 cups of wine. What are you hemming and hawing for? If you have something to say it directly. Everyone here is Ben Wang's brother. There is nothing to hide. Old 6, don't you agree? Li Hongyuan played with the small jade cup in his hand, smiling yet not smiling. Indeed, Prince Kang's heart inexplicably jumped, as if he had a bad premonition. However, after thinking about it, at most, it would be that 6th sister-in-law who was unhappy and threw a tantrum. What else could it be? Therefore, he insisted that the guard speak of the matter, without leaving anything out. The guard had no choice but to brace himself and lower his head. Like pouring beans, the speed of his speech was quite fast, and in fact, it was just a matter of a few sentences. When he finished speaking, the scene was so silent that a pin drop could be heard. Then, Prince Kong directly exploded, flinging away the beauty in his arms and kicking over the short table in front of him. He looked at Li Hongyuan with a gloomy face. Looking at Li Hongyuan's expression, he even suspected that he knew from the beginning. However, no one knew that he was going to give her away, so this possibility should not exist. Moreover, when he thought of Li Hongyuan's ruthlessness and the pain of his back almost being trampled on, he naturally did not dare to flare up at him. Where is Jin Wang Fei now? Replying to Wang Ye, she is still in the Fu. Although Prince Kong did not dare to challenge Li Hongyuan, he still dared to say a few words. 6th brother seems to be a man without discipline. That ridicule was not concealed at all. Why do you say that? The one who provoked Ben Wang's Wang Fei was eldest imperial brother, not Ben Wang. When eldest imperial brother was giving her away, Ben Wang wanted to remind you that Ben Wang was not interested in those beauties, so it was best that you did not send them to Jin Wangfu. It was you who did not listen. Now, it's just sending her back to you. What's the big deal? What's the big deal? Stripping his beloved concubine and throwing her together with a man. Was that called no big deal? Li Hongyuan, this bastard, did not take him seriously. His face, when he wanted to step on it, he stepped on it. Now, a mere woman dared to do this to him. Prince Kang's face was ferocious as he flicked his sleeves and left. Li Hongyuan also stood up. He knew what kind of temper Li Hongyuan had. Li Hongyuan was worried that he would not care about anything when he got mixed up. In this way, Wan Wan might be passive. Of course, he did not think that Wan Wan would suffer a loss. If he let his mistress suffer a loss, then the group of bodyguards would not need to mingle. However, knowing was one thing, his heart would still be worried. He must be present to watch and personally protect before he could feel at ease. And for the others, this was a good show. It would be a waste if they did not watch. If they watched, they could still find some entertainment. So they all got up and followed, still immaculately dressed on the surface. By the time this group of men arrived at the garden of Prince Kong Fu, Jingwan and Prince Kang's Sifei were still chatting and laughing while drinking tea. Seeing the aggressive Prince Kong, Jingwan unhurriedly got up, and the others followed her to pay their respects. Prince Kong did not shout rise, but Jingwan consciously stood up straight. There was a faint smile at the corner of her mouth, but there was no warmth in her eyes. Prince Kang's return time is a bit later than expected. Fortunately, Prince Kung-Fu is not completely unpleasant to the eyes. Otherwise, wouldn't it make people impatient to wait? When these words came out, many people sucked in a breath of cold air. Many people even secretly sighed in their hearts. Not one family would enter the same house. This degree of arrogance was comparable to Prince Jean. Prince Kang's face was distorted. He was obviously restraining his impulse to hit people. Today we came to Prince Kung-Fu to let Prince Kang know that unless our Wang Ye personally asks for the person, there is no need to take the initiative to give the person away. Sixth sister-in-law's courage. When the time comes, people will be surprised. In the end, you are only Li Shi's daughter-in-law. The husband is the wife's leader. The 3 obediences and 4 virtues. Jing Wan suddenly smiled and interrupted Prince Kang. In a flash, her face was cold. Prince Kang is sending a man to Didi's rear courtyard. What? Do you want to commit adultery in Didi's rear courtyard? Do you want to go find the Empress for comment, or do you want to directly find Fu Huang for comment? This hat was a bit too big. Prince Kang gritted his teeth and said, "A child molester can also be considered a man." Jing Wan clapped her hands and smiled. If Prince Kang says so, then there is no problem. Mama, go, send in a few more of Prince Kang's concubines. The child molesters and concubines are a family, serving Prince Kang together. Presumably, in Prince Kang's eyes, it is absolutely a wonderful thing. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6654097. HTML chapter error. Click here to report, exempt from registration. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com, Bikuga mobile reading website, ambicken.com. Chapter 378. Luo Shi, you dare. Jingwan raised a hand to stop Gong Mama. Why wouldn't I dare? Besides, Prince Kang himself doesn't care, so why get angry? Prince Kang's eyes were about to split open. No man would not care about this kind of thing. Behind him, Prince Kang's brothers all wanted to cover their faces with their hands. They really didn't want to admit that this was their brother, and that the Empress shrewd woman had given birth to him. Although Fu Huang wasn't particularly wise, he should still be considered normal. How could his son be a cripple? Right now they were completely being led by the nose. Alright, in any case, the first thing to do now was to remove something that was more conspicuous, wasn't it? However, they were quite happy to watch this kind of joke. They could even go into the palace and tell their Mufei. Then, they could also watch the Empress make a fool of herself. Oh, then Prince Kang, why don't you tell me what you care about? Jingwan carelessly stroked her sleeves. Prince Kang was furious. Jingwan's attitude made him almost stomp his feet. He pointed at the curtain. What I care about? You still dare to ask Ben Wang what I care about? A man, a child molester isn't a man. Prince Kang, you said it yourself. It said that a woman's heart is like a needle at the bottom of the sea, but men don't seem to be outdone. If Prince Kang doesn't care about this matter, then it naturally means that I, as your sister-in-law, didn't do anything wrong. Then, your anger is unreasonable. But if Prince Kang does mind, then I can't help but suspect that you have ulterior motives. You dare to do something that even you care about in your younger brother's backyard. What are your intentions? The more she spoke, the colder her expression became. Prince Kang was blocked until he couldn't speak. So after all was said and done, it was all his fault? If he said that he didn't mind, his backyard would probably be seen as a den of lust. If he did mind, then he intended to harm his younger brother. He couldn't get angry over the former, but if he got angry over the latter, others would only get angrier. Whatever they did was reasonable. In the end, this Jin Qinhuang, Fei had trampled on his face and caused a ruckus in his Wang Fu. But he had to come and apologize and settle the matter peacefully? Thinking of this, Prince Kang, who was burning with anger, lost his mind and raised his hand to slap her. Jingwan was also on guard against him. She subconsciously took 2 steps back. Prince Kang's first slap did not succeed. He wanted to do it a second time, but someone grabbed his wrist. Prince Kong screamed in pain, thinking that his wrist was broken. Li Hongyi, do you think I'm dead? You dare to attack this prince's princess in front of this prince? Li Hongyi's voice was so cold that it could drop ice shards. Prince Kong wanted to break free from Li Hongyuan's grip, but his little bit of strength was not enough. Moreover, he was in so much pain that he could not exert any strength. It had already become a habit for them to pretend to be brothers. Now that they saw this scene, the other brothers naturally came forward to mediate. Li Hongyuan's cold gaze swept over them. Li Hongming and the others seemed to be frozen. That gaze was too obvious. It was clearly saying that if they dared to interfere, then they were asking for it. To be honest, these brothers, including the sickly fifth prince, had also eaten at Li Hongyuan's place. However, compared to the others, it was nothing. It was nothing at all. Because the loss they suffered at Li Hongyuan's hands was too painful, they really could not summon up the courage to continue. In the end, Li Hongyuan was different from Jingwan. Jingwan took a roundabout route, while Li Hongyuan was simple and crude. However, his method could not be imitated by others. Because what he could do, others could not do. Jingwan saw that it was about time. She took 2 steps forward and held Li Hongyuan's other hand in a place where others could not see. Li Hongyuan tilted his head and glanced at her. He did not say anything and let go of her hand. The hostility in his eyes did not dissipate much. Li Hongyi rubbed his wrist that seemed to be about to break. He looked at Li Hongyuan and could not hold back the hatred in his eyes. He said sarcastically, "Sixth brother has no scruples about men and women. They have been raised together since a long time ago. If he wanted to commit adultery, he would have done it long ago, right? Look at what Prince Kong is saying. Those things in the past were thrown away after 7 days at most. Can things that have been thrown away still be considered masters? No matter how messy they are, it can't be considered our Wangyes. Just like the beauties that our Wangyes sent out before. Could they still be considered our Wangyes? Prince Kong received the most, right? Could it be that he still thought that they were our Wangyes women when he gave them the rights? Don't make me laugh to death," Jingwan said sarcastically. Prince Kang's face turned green and white. When men are talking, when is it a woman's turn to interrupt? Old Sixth is awe-inspiring in front of us brothers, but his own woman is riding on his head? Jingwan made no attempt to hide her TSK. Prince Kong is right. As a woman in the inner courtyard, it's not good for her to argue with men. Of course, there are people around. A man using a woman's means. Thus, if he is cut by a woman, it's his own fault. He deserves it. Lady Luo, what do you mean? Jingwan looked at Prince Kong with a fake smile. What I said. As she said this, her eyes swept over Li Hongming and the others. Besides, I didn't mention names. Someone came up to answer. Is he admitting that he did something? The others listened. No matter what, Li Hongyuan did not spend much most of the time, but when his mouth was venomous, he could make you so angry that 1 Buddha left your body and 2 Buddhas ascended to heaven. Jin Qin Wangfei's ability to insult others was enough to make people vomit blood. She clearly meant to implicate them, but they did not dare to answer. Originally, for a man to argue with a woman, he was at a disadvantage. If he really did not let it go, he would lose all face. Thus, Prince Kong turned his head and started to bombard Li Hongyuan. I really couldn't tell that Old Sixth is someone who is caught by a woman, and a jealous, vicious, and merciless woman. Let's not talk about whether you lose face as a man or not. If Fu Wang finds out, how this elder brother can see it. Finding a bunch of excuses to make trouble in Ben Wang Fu. In essence, it's just not tolerating people. Looking at it this way, her scheming is really impressive. I'd like to see if you're going to spend the rest of your life with her. Old Six. Li Hongyuan looked at Li Hongyi with a subtle gaze, as if he was looking at an idiot. He was too lazy to pay attention to him. Jealous? Prince Kong, are you talking about me? How can you say this? I still need Prince Kong to explain. A perfect smile hung on Jingwan's face again. Prince Kong, you must not invert right and wrong and put a big hat on me just to evade your own mistakes." When these words came out, who knew how many people's mouths twitched? Who was the one who inverted right and wrong? Could it be that the beauties in Old Six's courtyard were not handled by daimai? It was me who handled them. Does it have anything to do with jealousy? I already said that it was just some things that our Wangya didn't want. I don't know where they were long forgotten. I forgot to instruct the subordinates, so I spent money to raise them. I became the mistress of Jin Qin Wang Fu, cleaning up some useless and wasteful things. How could it be related to jealousy? It's true that Jin Qin Wang Fu is rich, but that didn't come from the wind. The places that should be frugal still need to be frugal, Jingwan said as she looked at Li Hongyuan in confusion. Wangya, could it be that this Chia has done something wrong? Li Hongyuan put his hand to his lips. At this moment he actually wanted to laugh a little, but he still cooperated with Jingwan and continued to act. Wang Fei is not wrong. So Prince Kong said that I'm jealous. Where did this conclusion come from? As for this ruthlessness, I don't know when I became ruthless and merciless, directly beating people into meat paste. Some dirty water shouldn't be splashed. I've only ruined my reputation, but the person who splashed dirty water, I don't know what they've ruined. These words in some people's ears couldn't stop their hearts from jumping. This had a deeper meaning. Since Prince Kong wants to distort the facts, then I can only find Fu Huang to reason with. At that time, don't say that I, as a daimai, didn't give face. There's one more thing that I need to let you know. Whether I'm jealous or not, it's up to our Wangya to decide. He didn't say anything, but the people outside are chattering. It's unreasonable. Or do you all think that the living king of hell is someone that I can control? Everyone looked at Li Hongyuan. What he said was indeed very reasonable. How could a woman easily deal with someone that even the emperor couldn't control? Li Hongyuan was actually a little helpless at this moment. It was originally a very serious matter, but it seemed that his wife had almost resolved it, and she even used his name. Well, on this point he was really wronged. He was clearly controlled by his wife, but he was very obedient. Forget it. There was no point in haggling over this. No one would believe it. Who told his reputation to be so deep-rooted? It was difficult for him to turn over a new leaf. It's quite boring. Let's go back. At this moment, Li Hongyuan seemed to have lost all his anger, as if he wasn't the one who wanted to kill people just now. Jingwan nodded slightly, but before she left, she still looked at Li Hongyi. Does Prince Kong have anything to say? Prince Kong sneered. Ben Wang's actions are upright, but it seems that I pitted sixth brother and sent him a few beauties. It's just that I wasn't considerate enough. Even in front of Fu Huang, Ben Wang will say the same thing. The others nodded slightly in their hearts, and some of the water in his brain was finally poured out. Jingwan expressed her understanding. Then I don't have to go in front of Fu Huang to comment on anything. Prince Kang's smile deepened, still carrying mockery and complacency, as if saying, "What can you do to me?" The others wanted to face-bomb again. Please, look at the situation clearly. The curtains haven't been removed yet, and your beloved concubine is naked with a man inside. It's just that she won't go in front of Fu Huang, but this might not be a good thing. Since Jin Qin Wang Fei could do such a thing in Prince Kang's Fu, then she might do something even more outrageous. Then it's better to go directly in front of Fu Huang and completely settle the matter. Sure enough, Jin Qin Wang Fei had a smile on her lips, her eyes cold. No matter if Prince Kong wasn't considerate enough or did it on purpose, I'm sure it's the latter. Prince Kong doesn't treat a child molester as a man and doesn't care, but this Wang Fei cares very much and is also very angry. Prince Kong, just watch, this matter isn't over. Then Jingwan looked at Li Hongyuan, a smile overflowing from the bottom of her eyes. It came from the bottom of her heart, gentle and affectionate. And she even took the initiative to pull Li Hongyuan's hand. Are we leaving now? Li Hongyuan nodded, ignoring the others, and pulled Jingwan away. And the people brought by Jingwan also crouched down and left with their masters. Prince Kong stood in the same place, his expression a little indescribable. The good show was over, so Li Hongming and the others also took their leave. Even if Li Hongyi wanted to eat them up, It didn't dispel their good mood. The unrelated people left, and then only their own people were left. Their faces were cut, and they were ridiculed to death. They had no road ahead, no door behind. They couldn't do anything to those people. But couldn't they deal with a group of lowly servants? Her entire person seemed to be shrouded in dark clouds, gloomy and sinister, looking exceptionally terrifying. Almost everyone's legs trembled. But Prince Kang's secondary consort was like an outsider. She crouched down and was about to take her leave. She only said that it had been a while, and she should go see the child. He knew that he wasn't in her heart, and also felt that she actually looked down on him, laughing at him like an outsider. Prince Kang's eyes were red from the provocation. Like a wild beast that had lost its mind, he grabbed the other person's neck. "Slut, you also dare to look at Ben Wan like that. You also dare." All the servants were frightened. Their legs went soft, and they knelt down on the ground, trembling. It should be known that they had always respected this secondary consort, not only because she took care of the little heir, but also because Prince Kang gave her face. Enchanting Rao was so favored, but she couldn't shake this secondary consort's position. Now that she was crazy and wanted to strangle the secondary consort to death, then they were naturally nothing. You clearly could have stopped it, but you let things develop to this extent, making Ben Wang be humiliated and laughed at by those good brothers. Ben Wang thinks that Ben Wang has taken good care of you, but you actually dare to treat Ben Wang like this? Since your heart isn't in Prince Kang's mansion, Ben Wang will fulfill your wish and send you to hell. Prince Kang's secondary consort's face was faintly green, and she only felt abnormally uncomfortable. However, although there was pain on her face, she didn't struggle, and her eyes could even be said to be calm. The more Prince Kang looked at her, the more he was an eyesore, and the strength of his hand was increasing. "Lord Father, what are you doing? Quickly let go of Aunt." Prince Kang's 7 or 8 years old legitimate eldest son was like an angry cub, rushing straight up and punching and kicking his father. "Let go of my aunt, let go of my aunt. You bastard, I'm going to tell Imperial Grandfather and Imperial Grandmother. You bastard angered my mother to death, and now you want to strangle my aunt to death. Quickly let go of me, let go." Prince Kang kicked his son away, and the hatred in his heart grew stronger. Even his own son saw him as an enemy. The little heir got up and pounced over, grabbing Prince Kang and fiercely biting him. He was so fierce that he was determined to bite off a piece of flesh from Prince Kang. Prince Kang was in so much pain that he let go and slapped his son. The little heir glared fiercely at him like a wolf cub, even though his face quickly swelled up and his ears hurt and buzzed. Prince Kang's secondary consort didn't care about herself, but she was still very concerned about her sister's child. Before she could catch her breath, she pounced over to check on the child's condition. Are you okay? Your Highness, is your legitimate eldest son, and he's not even 8 years old. How could you be so ruthless? You slut, you still have the nerve to say that. You taught this prince's son to dare to hit his own Lord Father. What are your intentions? Prince Kang's secondary consort glared fiercely at him, and her heart was also filled with hatred. But she didn't say anything. Aunt, my ears hurt, it hurts. Only then did tears fall down. The secondary consort's expression changed. Someone quickly called the estate doctor. Prince Kang's expression also changed, but he didn't say anything and let the secondary consort take his son away, but his face was still gloomy. Then he looked at the motionless curtain, and he couldn't help but feel angry. He quickly stepped forward and pulled the curtain open, and the situation inside made his pupils shrink. He saw that the boy had been moved. The boy who was taught to be a child molester had his eyes wide open, and he was lying in a pool of blood. A large area from his chest to his neck seemed to have turned into minced meat, and the enchanting girl's eyes looked like she had lost her soul. She was still holding a hairpin, mechanically inserting it again and again. Anyone who saw this scene would feel that something was wrong. Rao, he's already dead. Don't insert it again. The enchanting girl acted like she didn't hear anything. Inserting it again and again, Prince Kang grabbed her hand. That's enough, Rao. Look at me. The enchanting girl's eyes gradually focused, and then she slowly realized her current situation. She was stunned for a moment, and then she retreated with a cry of alarm. "I didn't do it on purpose. I didn't do it on purpose. I didn't do it on purpose." Looking at it, it was too much stimulation, and her entire person collapsed. Prince Kong reached out and hugged her. Don't be afraid, don't be afraid. This prince is here, this prince is here." The enchanting girl sobered up a bit this time. "Your Highness, I didn't do it on purpose. You have to believe me, you have to believe me. It's okay, it's just a lowly slave. If it's killed, then it's killed, don't mind it." Prince Kong comforted her while holding her up, preparing to send her back. The enchanting girl was still crying, and she kept trembling in Prince Kang's arms, looking exceptionally pitiful. It's just that, in a place where everyone couldn't see, the enchanting girl was like a malicious spirit demanding life. She probably never thought that she would fall so hard in this kind of situation. Jin Qian Wangfei. The tip of her tongue brushed against the gap between her teeth, and she tasted a trace of blood. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6654099. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Biku Pavilion Mobile Reading Website, mbicken.com. Chapter 379. The doctor was still treating Imperial Prince Kang's little heir. Imperial Prince Kang's concubine was sitting on the side, her face expressionless. Only her eyes were getting colder and colder. Her hands hidden in her sleeves were clenched into her palms, leaving a deep imprint. If this child was really deaf, then she couldn't absolve herself from a blame. This child could be considered the emperor's eldest grandson. Because of his intelligence and delicate appearance, even Emperor Lucheng valued him, not to mention the empress. To a certain extent, she valued him more than Imperial Prince Kong. If he became disabled, the consequences were unimaginable. In her opinion, being punished was one thing, but the main thing was guilt. Such a young child, when the doctor came out with the results, she knew from his expression that it wouldn't be good. Imperial Prince Kang's concubine closed her eyes. Just say it. Imperial concubine, please forgive this lowly one. This lowly one is incompetent. He was trembling. To a certain extent, being a consecrator in a large family was a good job. However, everything had two sides. Just like now, if something happened to his master, he could lose his life if he couldn't do anything about it. You may leave. Someone come, call the imperial physicians. Call as many as you can. It must be said that this was definitely not a small matter. She believed that the palace would soon be alarmed. Although Imperial Prince Kong was the one who did it, Jingwan, who caused Imperial Prince Kong to fly into a rage, couldn't escape responsibility. After all, anyone could vent their anger. It was also possible for people to lose control when they were extremely sad and painful. However, the person who called the imperial physicians hurriedly left Imperial Prince Kang's residence. Not long after, Li Hongyuan received the news, and the carriage from Imperial Prince Jin's residence slowly arrived at the prince's residence. "You might be deaf?" Li Hongyuan was a little surprised, but his expression didn't change at all, as if it wasn't a big matter. On the other hand, Jingwan couldn't help but frown and clench the handkerchief in her hand. Li Hongyuan reached out to hold Jingwan's hand. "Don't worry, I'll take care of everything." Jingwan shook her head. "I'm not afraid of being implicated, but I feel that Imperial Prince Kong is really even a vicious tiger wouldn't eat its cubs. How could he be so ruthless?" Yuan, you heard it too. He was coaxed by a concubine and didn't even care about the child. Children are treasures bestowed by the heavens. If you don't cherish them, this kind of person should die without descendants. Jingwan's expression was exceptionally cold at the end of her speech. Li Hongyuan gently stroked Jingwan's back. Li Hongyi is naturally irritable and impulsive. He does things without thinking. He often loses his mind over small matters. Even if the Empress and others help him deal with the aftermath, he often leaves behind traces. In this prince's opinion, if it wasn't for the empress's protection, he would have been gnawed to pieces in the palace. Speaking of which, he is particularly confident in himself. It's just that he relies on his identity as the eldest son of the D family and believes that the throne is naturally his. Cut off one of his wings, and then anyone can crush him to death. What is Ai Yuan going to do? Jingwan looked at Li Hongyuan, knowing that she had some plans. Just make the empress sick for a while, Li Hongyuan said lightly. Jingwan was horrified. Looking at Li Hongyuan, her eyes were filled with disbelief. This man's skill was so great that he could control the harem in his hands? It must be known that the harem was balanced, and there was not only one family that was dominant. Moreover, those women were not to be trifled with. You don't have a biological mother, but your adoptive mother and your own son. If you can control the harem, then what else can the others do? If they want to get rid of Lu Qingdi, whether alive or dead, it's a very simple matter. At this moment, Jingwan's expression was written all over her face. Li Hongyuan laughed. It's not that exaggerated. If it really reached that level, all of this would have been over long ago. It's just that some arrangements can be used once, but it can't be used a second time. Jingwan nodded. So that's how it is. Since that's the case, it must be a very secret arrangement. It's only used at the critical moment. There's no need to waste it now. When is it critical? And when is it a waste? There's no absolute definition of this. Wanwan, don't think that it's because of you that your husband is taking action. You think that this is a waste of opportunity. In fact, whether it's me or those brothers, what we do is essentially the same. We either strengthen ourselves or weaken others. It's only a matter of time to use some secret pawns now. It's enough as long as we can achieve our goal. Perhaps now is the best time. Besides, compared to you, any secret and critical arrangement of the emperor doesn't matter. It can be used or abandoned. Although Jingwan faintly gave Li Hongyuan a supercilious look, her slightly red cheeks and ears still revealed her true feelings. Li Hongyuan reached out and pulled her into his arms. His little sweetheart was still so thin-skinned. He was clearly telling the truth and absolutely didn't mean to say any sweet words deliberately. Every time, she would feel embarrassed. Why did she find someone to love her so much? If it were him, Wanwan would say pleasant words all day long, and he would also accept them without batting an eyelid. They quietly rubbed each other's ears for a while before they got down from the carriage. Since you think it's not a problem to do this now, I won't say anything more. But if the secret pawn is used, will it be dangerous? As long as it's a secret pawn from the beginning, they should be aware that they will be executed after being discovered. Wanwan, you should also understand this. Jingwan was silent. Indeed, no matter what kind of background, spies, moles, and secret pawns were all extremely dangerous things. We should take care of their families more. At least, if they were to sacrifice their lives, they should have no worries. Li Hongyuan sighed softly, but he didn't say anything. He was a black-hearted person from head to toe. He didn't care about human lives at all. In fact, his brothers and many superiors were all like this. As long as they could achieve their goal, a few people dying was nothing at all. They wouldn't even frown. However, this matter wasn't so serious this time. Don't worry, no one will die. The reason why we didn't use it a second time is to avoid being discovered. After all, this person is a little special. Under normal circumstances, her life won't be sacrificed. Jingwan was slightly surprised. Who else in the palace would not be willing to sacrifice their lives for her? Lu Qingdi didn't need to mention. If he wanted to do something to the empress, it wouldn't be so troublesome. Moreover, if this person could order the emperor around, he wouldn't need to worry about anything. Then, there was noble consort Su. Noble consort Su had such ability, she would definitely use it to help her own son. Other than these two people, who else? According to Jingwan, even if it was these two people, when necessary, this person would still be willing to sacrifice them. Then, who was so capable? Jingwan's eyes were filled with curiosity. Li Hongyuan didn't hide it from her. Qin Shufei. To be honest, this answer, Jingwan really didn't expect. Qin Shufei, that person, how to put it, had a relatively low presence. Although she wasn't as favored as noble consort Su, she was better than the empress. She didn't have any enemies in the palace, but no one dared to touch her. Although she didn't have any children, the Gong prince could be considered half an adopted son. Her maternal family also supported the Gong prince on the surface. However, the struggle for the throne didn't seem to affect her at all. No matter how you looked at it, she seemed to be a relatively special existence in the harem. Compared to the empress and noble consort Su, she was more relaxed and carefree. Compared to the other concubines, her position was more stable. After coming back this time, I should have paid a visit to noble consort Su, but because of an accident, I couldn't go. I have to find a time to pay a visit. At the same time, she wanted to see if there was anything special about this Qin Shufei. I'll go after this matter. In fact, it doesn't matter. Wan, you don't have to worry about it. Qin Shufei won't have any grudges. In fact, I want to know more, Yuan. What's the relationship between you and noble consort Su? No matter how you look at it, you two shouldn't be related at all, but she can be used by you. If you say there's nothing between you two, no one would believe it. Jingwan looked at him, her face almost saying, still not telling the truth. How should I put it? In fact, it was Qin Shufei who took the initiative to find this prince before this prince left the palace. The reason for this is unknown. In the beginning, Qin Tianming was already in the palm of my hand. Because my methods were more violent, generally speaking, no one would be happy. I didn't care. I wasn't cultivating him as a confidant. As long as I achieved my goal, it was fine. It was just that when I didn't know, Qin Shufei mediated between us. After that, Qin Tianming's mood became better. Even if he was tortured by me, he didn't complain. Qin Shufei is a very smart person. I suspect that the reason Qin Tianming was able to sit in the position of left commander-in-chief was because of her. Otherwise, Qin Tianming would not have told Qin Shufei such a big thing. In the imperial harem, if Qin Shufei wants to compete with Empress Sun and noble consort Su, it's more than enough for her to stand on three sides. She might even have the upper hand. If she was willing to help Old Fourth definitely wouldn't be like this now. So, Yuan doesn't know much about Qin Shufei. It's only based on the surface. To a certain extent, she's the one who hides the deepest? It's not a problem to say that. Then, is she reliable? Based on her understanding of Li Hongyuan, if he didn't know very well or had something that could be used against him, he wouldn't easily use her. It doesn't matter. Regardless of whether Qin Shufei is reliable or not, it has nothing to do with me. If she really has any bad intentions, Wan, you have to believe that before she does anything, I will let her know the consequences of boarding this prince's ship and going against this prince. Speaking of which, it had been many years. Although Li Hongyuan had never trusted Qin Shufei had never deliberately done anything. It was just that Li Hongyuan occasionally needed her to cover up. Qin Shufei was always watertight. Although he didn't completely trust her, she was quite useful. Jingwan was relieved. After all, if Qin Shufei really hit it well, then it would be good if she didn't have any bad intentions. Once she had bad intentions, she would be quite dangerous. Therefore, she had to be on guard. Speaking of which, under normal circumstances, unrelated people wouldn't help others for no reason, especially this kind of matter that concerns their lives. Before you left the palace, you shouldn't have shown any signs. Even the Gong Prince has a higher chance of winning than you, so there's no reason for him to bet on you. Could it be that Qin Shufei actually has a request, and only you can achieve it, so she came to you? Who knows? In fact, in Li Hongyuan's impression, the Qin Shufei of his previous life was basically the same as in this life. The only difference was that in his previous life, he didn't have any interactions with Qin Shufei. When the dust finally settled, because she didn't participate in the struggle for the throne, and because of her relationship with Qin Tianming, Li Hongyuan didn't touch her. After ascending the throne, she was the only grand imperial concubine, and had been raised in the palace. It could be said that she was the woman with the highest status in the palace. However, she didn't interfere in the palace's affairs at all, living in seclusion. She was simply an invisible person. If she didn't appear at important palace banquets, outsiders wouldn't even know of her existence. Occasionally, Li Hongyuan would wonder if Qin Shufei was the same as him, having a second chance in life. After a long time, it didn't seem to be the case. If she really had foresight, why didn't she do anything? However, Li Hongyuan didn't completely deny his guess. If she really was the same as him, then she should also know about his situation. After all, the changes he made could be said to be earth-shattering. She was just a harem woman. There was no need for her to do anything. As long as she got in touch with him, she would be the biggest winner in the end. All of this was based on speculation. Maybe there were other reasons. Li Hongyuan wasn't interested in getting to the bottom of it. As long as it didn't interfere with him, then it didn't matter what Qin Shufei's situation was. It's just that this statement seems a bit far-fetched. Don't think so much. As long as it doesn't interfere, who cares? You're right. Originally, I had a backup plan for Imperial Prince Kong, but now it doesn't seem too good to continue. Gong Jiu's identity changed from being hidden to being revealed. Back then, we made detailed arrangements, so there's no problem with his identity. Later on, you can send people to Imperial Prince Kang's residence. Gong Jiu's medical skills are there for all to see. He's better than many of the imperial physicians. You can show your attitude enough, and even if you continue to do something to Li Hongi, you won't get involved with you. So, whatever you want to do, you can do it freely. It's one thing to give face, but I'm afraid that Imperial Prince Kong won't accept it no matter what. The pitiful one will only be the child. Li Hongyuan wanted to say, so what if the enemy's child died? Forget it. If I really said this, Wan would feel terrible. You, and his father weren't of the same mind, so it's fine to keep him. If he becomes a scourge in the future, then just get rid of him. I'll enter the palace and directly look for Imperial Father. After hearing Li Hongyuan's words, Jingwan ordered people to pay close attention to the situation in Imperial Prince Kang's residence. If possible, she wanted to send Gong Jiu to have a look as soon as possible. In her previous life, there had been cases where people were slapped until they became deaf. If it was a perforated eardrum, then it was likely that even Gong Jiu would be helpless. If it was a damaged ear nerve, then it should be better, and there might be a way. No matter what kind of situation it was, it should be treated as soon as possible. Even if people thought that she had a guilty conscience, she wouldn't hesitate. Sure enough, after the people in Imperial Prince Kang's residence invited an imperial physician, it didn't take long for the palace to know. Not to mention how furious Emperor Lu Chengdi and the Empress were. They immediately sent their trusted subordinates out of the palace to Imperial Prince Kang's residence to inquire about the specific situation. A group of people arrived one after another, and the courtyard of Imperial Prince Kang's heir was filled with people, but Imperial Prince Kang was nowhere to be seen, which was hard to believe. They asked about the cause of Yu Er's injury. Without a doubt, Jingwan's havoc in Imperial Prince Kang's residence was also known. However, because the person who narrated this matter was Imperial Prince Kang's side consort subordinate, he didn't deliberately distort black and white, nor did he use the art of language. He only explained the cause and effect clearly. If they really wanted to pursue the matter, Jingwan really didn't have any responsibility. After all, the young heir was beaten because of his aunt. The people from the palace naturally didn't dare to comment and only asked about Imperial Prince Kang's current whereabouts. Imperial Prince Kang's side consort sneered. He's probably hugging his frightened, beloved concubine and comforting her. Right at this moment, a maidservant came in. Seeing so many people present, she became timid for a moment. Why have you been gone for so long? Where is His Highness? Imperial Prince Kang's side consort asked coldly. The maidservant stammered, and there was an indescribable shame on her face. When she saw her master's cold and hard expression, she spoke in a trembling voice. This servant didn't see His Highness. The maidservant in the concubine's courtyard stopped this servant from entering and said that His Highness was handling important matters and had no time to see this servant. This servant said that the young heir's condition wasn't very good. That maidservant sneered at the servant, saying that master is a side consort after all, using the young heir as a raft to fight for favor. This servant is too shameless. Not only were there people from the palace present, but there was also a group of imperial physicians. When they heard this, they wished that they were deaf and didn't hear anything. In fact, they all heard it, so they looked down. However, in their hearts, this imperial Prince Kong was indeed unreliable and completely useless. This kind of person, it had to be said that when people court death, they couldn't be stopped. Based on Imperial Prince Kang's current actions, even if someone wanted to lessen his crime, they would be powerless. After all, if they wanted to go against their heart and say a few good words about him, no matter how thick-skinned a person was, they wouldn't be able to say it. However, Imperial Prince Kang's side consort had an as-expected expression. "How is Yuji's situation? Please ask the Tyrant to come up with a plan." If one listened carefully, they would find that her voice was actually a bit hoarse. She was trying her best to maintain normal, and the strangulation marks on her neck were becoming more and more obvious. Side consort Nyang Yang, this official can only do his best, and the final result, Imperial Prince Kang's side consort clenched her handkerchief. Her unfinished words were very clear, asking the Tyrant to do his best. As it should be, the people in the palace had to go back to report and invited the imperial physician to go with them. The situation of the legitimate emperor's eldest grandson still required him to personally report to the emperor. Master, outside the Fu, Imperial Prince Jin's personal attendant brought a man. It is said that he is a Fu doctor brought back from Jiangnan. According to him, Imperial Prince Jin personally praised his medical skills. Imperial Prince Jin's side consort learned that Lil Shitsi was injured, but didn't know the specific situation. She said that it wasn't good to go and caused trouble now, so she sent the Fu doctor over to take a look. First, she wanted to understand the situation, and second, she wanted to see if she could do anything. Regardless of whether the people present thought that Imperial Prince Jin's side consort sent people to inquire about information or was sincerely concerned about little Shitsi, Imperial Prince Kang's side consort didn't say anything and let people invite the person in. Thus, the people who were about to leave stayed for the time being. A person who could be praised by Imperial Prince Jin must have some skills. However, when they saw the person, they couldn't help but be suspicious. After all, he looked a bit too young. Gong Jiu didn't care. After greeting Imperial Prince Kang's side consort and obtaining permission, he carefully examined little Shitsi and finally concluded, it can be treated, it can be healed. There wasn't a word of superfluous words. Compared to the imperial physicians who talked about a minor illness as a major illness, they talked about a major illness as a terminal illness. Are these words true? Imperial Prince Kang's side consort, who didn't have a good expression, suddenly stood up. She finally showed a bit of joy, but she was also a bit worried, afraid that she heard wrong. "You, this young man, have a big tone." The imperial physicians were unhappy. The result of their diagnosis was that little Shitsi wasn't completely deaf. This was already the best result. A young man dared to be so insolent. Gong Jiu didn't pay attention to them at all. He only clasped his hands in front of Imperial Prince Kang's side consort. This small one doesn't dare to speak rashly when it concerns little Shitsi. The imperial physicians shut their mouths. Indeed, this kind of thing, no one dared to carelessly boast. Then we will have to trouble the physician. If you need any medicinal herbs, just say it. If the Fu doesn't have it, the palace will definitely have it. Wang Fei sent this small one here with this intention. Since this small one can do it, this small one will definitely do his best. Gong Jiu wrote the prescription and then performed acupuncture. During the process of his acupuncture, the other imperial physicians all picked up the prescription and looked at it. It must be said that these people's medical skills weren't bad. At a glance, it seemed that there was a lot of potential. Looking at Gong Jiu again, there was some change in their expressions. It must be said that they weren't people who were jealous of ability. Although it was indeed a bit shameful to be compared to a young man, now was not the time to care about this. One after another, they went to see Gong Jiu perform the acupuncture, suspecting that they were secretly learning from him. Seeing that Gong Jiu ignored them, they just stood there motionless. Imperial Prince Kang's side consort saw the attitude of the imperial physicians, and her heart became more relieved. She hurriedly called for someone to get the medicine. As for the imperial physicians, the more they looked, the more fearful they were. This young man was really daring to give birth to needles. If it were them, even if they knew that it could be treated like this, they would not dare to do it. Should it be said that they were really old and had stayed in the imperial hospital for too long, that they were overcautious in everything? Those who should return to the palace still returned to the palace. But for the time being, they didn't bring along the imperial physicians. As for what they would say when they returned, in front of their masters, they would naturally speak the truth. They didn't dare to be biased, and even more didn't dare to add oil to vinegar or delete anything. Mu Gonggong also walked around and then returned to Jin Qinhuangfu. Jingwan had also been waiting for the news. When she learned that Imperial Prince Kang's heir could recover, she was greatly relieved. As for Imperial Prince Kang's actions, she really didn't know what to say. It seems that even the heavens are standing on Wanwan's side. It was Li Hongyi who sought death. Li Hongyuan's tone was indifferent. Li Hongyuan's heart was thinking more about that woman, Yaorao. Li Hongyi would most likely push all the blame onto her head, saying that it was her who seduced Li Hongyi to commit adultery in broad daylight, disregarding the imperial grandson. Whether it was for the sake of face or something else, in this case, Yaorao would most likely be executed. If that woman were to fall like this, it would really be too unjust. But as far as Li Hongyuan knew, he feared that it wouldn't be that easy. Speaking of which, Yaorao was indeed unlucky. Not only was she unknowingly tricked by Jingwan, she only thought of retrieving Imperial Prince Kang's favor and neglected other things. The result was that she was even more unlucky. https://www.yanguiwaiwo.com/11807/6654101. HTML chapter error. Click here to report, exempt from registration. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.yanguiwaiwo.com, Bikuga mobile reading website, yanguiwaiwo.com. Chapter 380. After Lu Chengdi's servant returned, he reported the cause and effect in detail. However, this time he used a little bit of skill in speaking. It was not because he was partial to Li Hongyuan and Jingwan, but because he hated Prince Kang in his heart. The other party was a prince, so there was no possibility of revenge. Now that there was a chance, he naturally seized the opportunity to make things difficult for Prince Kang. Sure enough, except for the fact that Jingwan made a scene in Prince Kang's mansion, Lu Chengdi did not connect the matter of his grandson's injury to Jingwan. Instead, because she sent a doctor, he was quite relieved that his grandson was fine. He did not blame concubine Kang, but he was quite angry that his eldest son almost beat his grandson until he became deaf and turned around to sleep with his concubine. He immediately smashed something. Go to Prince Kang's mansion again and pass on Zhan's verbal order. Tell Li Hongyi to kneel in Yu Er's courtyard. When Yu Er gets better, he can get up. And that lowly servant beat her to death. Lu Chengdi suppressed his anger and said expressionlessly, "Yes, Your Majesty." The chamberlain fiercely sighed in his heart. A father kneeling to a son, Prince Kang could be considered to be the first. For an extremely narrow-minded person like him who was very prideful, this point alone was enough to make him angry for a long time. Moreover, this matter would not be over so easily. He must find a way to make the emperor punish him more severely. As for the empress, she was completely realistic. The empress sat upright, and no one could see her emotions. She just closed her eyes and did not open them for a long time. The servant beside her did not dare to breathe loudly, for fear that he would suffer a disaster if something went wrong. The empress thought more than Luchengdi. First of all, it was not Li Hongyi, not Yaorao, and not Jingwan, but Prince Kang's concubine. From the time she had invited the imperial physician over with great fanfare, to the time she had exposed Li Hongyi's illicit affair with someone else, when her son had been injured in front of everyone. As long as the empress wanted to, she could have suppressed all of these incidents. However, not only had she not done so, she had even recklessly publicized it. In the empress's eyes, she was naturally the one who had done the most wrong. However, the empress knew very well that because of Yu Er's dependence on his aunt, she could only be lightly punished and could not be severely punished. Perhaps it was because of this that she had acted so unscrupulously. As for Li Hongyi, the empress had long been disappointed that even the person who slept next to him hated him so much and schemed against him. It would be a waste of energy to say another word. However, she only had one son and could not ignore him, because without her son, she would not be able to realize her ambitions. However, it was unnecessary to talk about this now. The key was how to minimize the possible negative consequences. The empress wanted to bite Jingwan, but imperial concubine Su and the others would never agree. If they really tried to drag each other down, her son would not have a good ending. Therefore, she could only let that lowly servant bear the greatest blame. The empress opened her eyes and ordered the people around her to make another trip. They had to deal with some matters before the emperor's people to express their attitude. There were not many people in the imperial harem who expressed concern and pity for the little child. Even if they said, "Ah, so pitiful," it was with a strong sense of schadenfreude. It would be best if the eldest grandson of the emperor was dead, let alone deaf. Unfortunately, why did someone meddle in other people's business? Treating the son of one's enemy was like raising a tiger to invite calamity. How stupid would that person have to be to send a physician to their doorstep? That's right. In many people's eyes, Jingwan was stupid. Even if she wanted to save face, she didn't need to go to such lengths. If the eldest grandson of the emperor was disabled, Prince Kang's bargaining chip for the throne would be greatly reduced. Prince Rui was also powerful. The one thing he lacked the most compared to Prince Kang was that he did not have a son. Imperial concubine Su did not say a word about this. After all, she was still in trouble. However, in Imperial concubine Su's eyes, Prince Kang's son was the most eye-catching. Because of Li Hongyuan, it could be said that she suppressed all her feelings for Jingwan. On the way, the empress's people saw Emperor Luchengdi's people and couldn't help but feel frightened. Imperial concubine Su really had foresight. Without hesitation, she took a detour to avoid them and went to Prince Kang's mansion at a faster speed. At this time, Prince Kang had already climbed up from Yaorao's bed, and the news that Yaorao's courtyard was blocked by Prince Kang's side concubine, whether intentionally or not, finally spread. The servant who had blocked Prince Kang's side concubines maid couldn't help trembling at this time. Finally, she suppressed her fear and went into the room to report. After all, the matter was getting bigger and bigger. If it was delayed, they might all die without a burial place. Just a moment ago, they were still lovey-dovey and flirting with each other. In an instant, Prince Kang's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. He pushed Yaorao away and got out of bed to kick the kneeling maid's heart. "Lowly maid, tell me clearly what happened." "What happened?" That maid was kicked until she vomited blood and trembled like sifting chaff. Enduring the pain, she told the story intermittently. Prince Kang was reckless and impulsive. He was not smart, but he was not completely brainless. Now he realized that he was finished. This time, even if he didn't die, he would lose a layer of skin. Ignoring the maid on the ground and Yaorao, he pulled his clothes and hurriedly put them on. Without even wearing shoes, he rushed to his son's courtyard. Yaorao, who was lying on the bed, had an unusually gloomy expression. She didn't expect that not only did she fall once, but before she could completely get up, she fell for the second time. And this time, it would not be so easy to get up. Yaorao had been struggling for many years. If her brain wasn't enough, she would have died long ago. She was very clear about her current situation. Li Hongyi, that waste, would absolutely not be able to protect her. She didn't dare to have a bit of luck. Yarao came down from the bed. She didn't have a single thread on her body. She didn't seem to feel cold at all. She directly walked in front of the maid and also kicked her. Not only that, she also stepped on the maid's neck. The concubine sent someone. Why didn't you inform me? The maid was very scared, but she didn't dare to resist at all. Master. This servant thought that the concubine wanted to borrow the heir's favor, so Yarao leaned over and slapped her. She deliberately bent her finger slightly and scratched the maid's face, leaving several bloody marks. You have only been in Prince Kang's mansion for 1 or 2 days. The concubine wants to use this method to gain favor? You're just a waste who can't do anything right. Yarao was so angry that her chest couldn't help heaving up and down. What kind of temperament the concubine had, she was very clear about it. Because of this, she dared to be unscrupulous in Prince Kang's mansion. She held onto Prince Kang, that man who couldn't stand good words, and from time to time gave him some ideas. She was the most powerful person in the mansion. If the concubine came to find her, it would not be fake. The people under her actually made such a low-level mistake. It was really not a small mistake, but a big mistake could be fatal. Perhaps it was because she had been too relaxed and too idle for half a year. In a moment of carelessness, the people under her also became impetuous and frivolous. However, although this maid was one of her own people, she hadn't been with her for a long time. Another 2 maids came in and respectfully stood there. They didn't say anything and didn't even look at her. Help me and this cheap maid change our appearance, Yarao coldly said. She didn't ask where these 2 people went before. She wanted to save her life now, so she could only use this method. The maid on the ground suddenly opened her eyes wide. She was very clear about what was going to happen next. Speaking of people, as long as they could live, no one would want to die, especially when they had been living a good life before. Master, please spare my life. This servant knows that she was wrong. Please give the servant one more chance. Yarao sneered. So you want this master to die? She also threw something in front of the maid. The maid's voice stopped abruptly. Her lips squirmed, but she couldn't say another word. After a moment, her heart was like dead ashes. The other 2 good sisters pulled her up and used something to smear her face. And Yarao's face was also treated like this. If one paid a little attention, they would find that Yarao's several trusted maids were actually very similar to her figure. In terms of appearance, there were also similarities. But these similarities were not many, so under normal circumstances, it wouldn't attract attention. And these maids' facial features were not very prominent. Because the less distinctive they were, the more convenient it was to disguise. These maids, to a certain extent, were Yarao's substitutes. And in Kang Qinhuang Shizi's courtyard, when Kang Qinhuang arrived, his clothes hadn't been completely tidied up. But no matter who it was, they all acted as if they didn't see anything. Kang Qinhuang anxiously inquired about his son's situation, but his Si-Fei completely ignored him. Even though Kang Qinhuang was angry, he didn't dare to make a move now. Kang Qinhuang Si-Fei dared to do this, but the imperial physicians didn't dare to be mute. Naturally, they would answer all the questions. But when Kang Qinhuang learned that the one treating his son was Jin Qinhuang Fu's Fu doctor, he immediately exploded. Luo sure that slut. The weasel pays a visit to the chicken for the new year. Now that she sent someone here, who knows what intentions she has. Immediately scram for Ben Wang. Saying this, he rushed forward and wanted to make a move on Gongjiu. It was probably the most crucial moment. Gongjiu didn't move at all, concentrating on twirling the silver needles. Not to mention Kang Qinhuang, Si-Fei. Even the imperial physicians and the others were shocked. Those with eyes knew that they couldn't disturb him now and subconsciously stopped him. These people dared to offend their superiors. It could be seen how angry Kang Qinhuang was. He didn't have any manners and shouted without caring about his image. Gong Jiu took out a silver needle and turned to look at Kang Qin-wang. His face was like an ancient well without ripples. Wang Ye can continue to make a ruckus. If it affects Shitzi and causes him to wake up, the needle will deviate and cause serious consequences. At worst, this little one will pay with my life, but Shitzi, Kang Qin-wang Si-Fei was thoroughly enraged. Someone come, drag Wang Ye out. Don't allow him to take half a step into the room. Slut, you have such big guts. For Yu Ji, Chia will definitely offend her superiors. When Yu Ji recovers, Chia will personally go to Fu Huang Muhu to ask for forgiveness. Kang Qin-wang Si-Fei was happy and fearless. After bringing up Lu Qingdi and Emperor Sun, Kang Qin-wang's arrogance restrained a little. But the negative emotions on his body were still so strong that people didn't dare to approach. Then he scolded the imperial physicians outside that they were useless. There were so many of them, but they relied on a nobody to treat his son. Useless, useless. All of them were useless. Originally, they felt a little uncomfortable because they couldn't compare with the young man. Fortunately, most of them were more open-minded, and Gong Jiu didn't mind them stealing. As the saying went, the one who reached the top was the first. They all calmed down and contributed to Yu Ji's illness. Now that they were insulted by Kang Qin-wang like this, even a clay figurine would have a temper. How could they not be angry in their hearts? However, the other party was a noble, so they couldn't do anything to him. In addition, Kang Qin-wang Si-Fei repeatedly apologized on the side, so they naturally expressed that they wouldn't care. But in their hearts, they fiercely marked Kang Qin-wang. You, Kang Qin-wang, better be healthy forever, otherwise. It was said that doctors shouldn't be offended easily, but Kang Qin-wang had offended almost the entire Imperial Physician Hospital. Kang Qin-wang didn't stop. As for Yaorao's side, she quickly tore off a mask from the face of Yaorao and her maid, with 2 masks in hand. Yaorao handed her mask over. The person in charge of the disguise stuck the mask on the maid's face. After some processing, he quickly changed the maid into Yaorao's clothes. Not to mention other things, just by looking at her face and figure, one would think that she was a pair of twin sisters. You're not dead yet, Yaorao said coldly. The person who was originally in a daze seemed to have come alive in an instant. Her every move was another Yaorao. Even Li Hongyi, in a state of unease, would be able to defend the authenticity of the mask. Yaorao nodded with satisfaction. Just as she was about to put on the maid's mask, she hesitated for a moment. Go and bring another maid in. This maid, who had also angered Li Hongyi, was also not safe. She had to find another person who was more peripheral to guarantee her 100% survival. Fortunately, she was prepared from the beginning, so she didn't have to worry about not being able to find a candidate. Only this person would be completely kept in the dark, that's all. The maid, who was in charge of cleaning, was brought in. Speaking of which, since she was in charge of cleaning, her hands and feet were not tender. However, this maid was different. She was pampered by her master, so she didn't need to do much work. Moreover, she often got good things from her master, so she didn't know how many people were envious and jealous of her master. Now that her master was looking for her, she happily came in. When she saw her 2 masters, she was unusually surprised, but before she could speak, her mouth was blocked from behind. Very soon she lost consciousness and fainted. Not only that, she was also fed a mute medicine, so that even if she suddenly woke up, she wouldn't be able to open her mouth. Similarly, Yaorao took off the mask from the maid's face. This time, Yaorao didn't hesitate at all. Soon after, she put on the maid's clothes, combed the same hair ornament, and put on the head ornament. After changing her clothes, Yaorao turned around and put some things into a small chest. After that, her bearing changed. Originally, she had an enchanting figure, but in an instant she changed into a somewhat naive maid who was somewhat proud of herself because of her master's reward. Just like that, she swaggered out with the chest. When the other servants in the courtyard saw this, they didn't suspect anything. And inside the room, the maid who was doing the rough work had changed into the maid who was disguised as Yaorao. Her hands and feet were tied behind her back, and her mouth was also gagged. Perhaps because her fate was already determined, Yaorao was instead calm. Looking at her own face, she sneered again and again in her heart. Look, naive idiot. She really thought that she got the favor of her master for no reason. She didn't know that she was just a substitute for her master. Essentially, she was the same as that animal. And she was also nothing more than an idiot without any power to resist. As for the other two maids, they were the two martial artists beside Yaorao. At this time, one stayed behind, and the other went to look for Yaorao. Although Yaorao was now wearing the skin of a maid, but she was still not completely safe, because as long as concubine Luo died, this identity would have no backing. In the past, she had obtained so many good things, but later she would definitely be targeted. Therefore, Yaorao had to change her identity again. As for whether she would leave Prince Kang's mansion or not, she would see the situation later. For Yaorao, it would not be difficult to change her identity again. The so-called substitute, there was 1 comma 2, and naturally there was a 3. A substitute still needed a substitute. This 3 was the kind that did not attract attention at all. After killing her, she would disguise herself as a maid who did the rough work and pretend that someone was greedy for money. After killing the maid, she would replace the 3rd identity. Everything would be perfect. Just as the maid who did the rough work hid the chest and came out, a group of people hurriedly came in from outside, and Li Hongyi was among them. The maid who did the rough work avoided at a relatively far place and respectfully bowed to salute. It seemed that she was still somewhat afraid. When she saw the people enter the main room, she slowly got up. She kept her head down all the time, and the emotions in her eyes could not be seen at all. After a moment, she raised her head, and then met the eyes of one of the martial artist's maids. She nodded without a trace, and took advantage of the chaos here to change her identity for the last time. Concubine Huang was beaten in front of Imperial Prince Kong. No matter how she cried and begged for mercy, Imperial Prince Kong was indifferent. He just watched her being beaten until her flesh was lacerated and blood flowed out. Finally, she breathed her last, and her eyes bulged out. She died with endless resentment. And that maid who blocked the side concubine woke up in pain. She completely did not know what had happened, and was beaten to death. She truly died with remaining grievances. From the beginning to the end, Li Hongyi did not discover that Yaorao was a fake. In fact, it was very easy to distinguish the real from the fake. As long as he rolled up his sleeves, it would be fine. After all, he and Yaorao had just made love not long ago, and the traces on his body were very obvious. However, who would have thought that in such a short time, the person would be changed? And Li Hongyi only wanted to let Yaorao die earlier, so as to reduce his guilt. He had never thought that Yaorao had helped him a lot in this half year. Not long ago, she was still flirting with him. But now, she was so merciless, and he did not regret it at all. He was selfish and heartless. Perhaps he thought that he was straightforward and decisive, as a superior should be like this. However, before the ground was cleaned up, Lucheng Emperor's chamberlain was brought over by the servants. Looking at the disfigured corpse, and then looking at the people of the Empress Palace who were respectful to him with a smile, the chamberlain sneered in his heart, and moved quite quickly. And then looking at Prince Kong, who had a sorrowful face, he kept saying that it was his fault. He should not have beaten the child. It was that lowly maid who pestered him, so that he did not know about his son's injury in time. It was his fault. It was all his fault. He was sorry for the child, sorry for the deceased Wang Fei, sorry for his father and mother. It could be said that he was weeping. However, Lucheng Emperor's people just watched the play calmly, and for a time, Prince Kong could not continue his act. Until the end, Lucheng Emperor's chamberlain leisurely passed on the verbal order. As expected, Prince Kang's face was distorted, but this was his father's words. No matter who he was angry with, he did not dare to be angry with his father. Even if he disobeyed the Empress, he could not disobey Lucheng Emperor. He kicked a luring corpse twice. It was all this B****'s fault. It was too easy to beat her to death like this. He completed the plan of knocking people out with medicine as fast as possible. Although it did not take long to make the mask, it could not be obtained immediately. While his subordinates were waiting for the mask to be made, the rough maid came out to keep watch, which was quite open and above board. By the way, she expressed her fear to everyone, as well as the panic after losing her backer. But everyone who saw her was originally afraid of the bloody scene, but in a flash, they had evil intentions. Concubine Rong had given this girl many benefits: gold, silver, jewels, silk, satin, rouge, face powder, and even the ridiculously expensive things in the Rouge Pavilion were given to her. A rough servant girl was actually able to stay in a room all by herself. This treatment was even better than a first-rate servant girl. How could people not be envious? It wasn't that no one had suspected why Concubine Rong didn't directly promote her, since she thought so highly of her. Instead, she stayed as a servant girl. However, all of their suspicions were thrown out of the window when they saw those treasures. After Enchanting Rao finished her performance, she reckoned that it was almost time for her to leave, and some of the maidservants followed after her. Concubine Rong calmly tore off the mask on her face, but the moment she turned the corner, she changed her mask and turned in another direction. The people who followed her looked and confirmed the direction of the target. However, when they turned the next corner, a person rushed up. They only felt darkness in front of their eyes and wanted to retreat. The next moment, they felt something was wrong. The straight tip of a knife was pointed at their abdomen. When people were facing a threat to their lives, they could often erupt with their most terrifying potential. There was no doubt that the rough maid who had been tampered with was far from a match, and then fell in a pool of blood. And the servant who killed the maid, before she could recover, heard a scream from the side, which immediately attracted more people's attention. It was too late to hide. Although the person who screamed was not Yaorao, who was wearing someone else's face, that person was attracted by Yaorao. It could be said that in the end, Yaorao still cheated Prince Kang. After all, there were still a lot of things in Prince Kang's mansion. Adding in the matter of the servant being snobbish and forgetting righteousness at the sight of profit, the maid who had just lost her power was targeted by others and then killed inhumanely. To put it lightly, it was not strict enough. To put it seriously, how could one sweep the world if one did not sweep the house? In short, it was an additional crime. A servant who was beaten to death by a master and a servant who was killed by a servant were both dead, but the meaning was completely different. If the former died, no one would say anything. If the latter died, then so be it. If the latter was investigated, then it could even alert the capital government. Prince Kang and the people of the two big shots in the palace had not left yet. This murder was simply under his nose. The shadow in Prince Kang's heart was probably already incalculable. Prince Kang was straightforward and decisive this time. He simply did not ask the cause and effect. The murderer was directly beaten to death. As for the explanation, he simply did not give the murderer a chance to speak. Together with the person who was killed, plus the previous two, they were wrapped in a mat and transported out of the city to the mass grave. Until now, everything that Yaorao had planned was settled. Because Prince Kang did not investigate, the whole thing could be said to be flawless. However, was it really so? She would not know that in fact, someone had been watching her in the dark. In fact, everything she did was in fact seen by someone. After all, they were servants. It did not matter if two of them died. The two eunuchs in the palace did not say a word. However, when they returned, their master would certainly know. Not to mention anything else, at least, Lu Qingdi would certainly remember him in his heart. Under the eyes of the people coming and going, Prince Kang finally took a look at Lu Qingdi's eunuchs, gritted his teeth, and knelt down. This action shocked many people. After looking at each other in dismay, they buried their heads and did their own things, pretending that they did not see it. It was not something they could join in on, nor was it something they could watch as a joke. Now they were enjoying it, but later they might lose their lives. When the people of Uyghur's outer family rushed over, they were originally furious. However, when they saw Prince Kang, regardless of whether it was the anger in their hearts or the words that were on the tip of their tongues, they all swallowed them back down. They were stuck in their chests and became more and more unhappy. After this period of fermentation, they basically knew everything that they needed to know about this matter. Next, it was basically the time for the families to send their greetings and care. After that, Prince Kang's glorious deeds would probably be known to everyone. Jingwan was also preparing, but her preparation was perhaps not the same as others. Jingwan asked Eunuch Mu to take a lot of banknotes and start to visit the brothels, pleasure boats, and dance halls in the capital. There was only one purpose: to buy a large number of courtesans and courtesans. Eunuch Mu said that he was really miserable. He went to those brothels again and again. Obviously, there were many real men under his master's command, but he, a fake man, was asked to do this kind of thing. Why didn't the princess think about his feelings? It must be because he offended the princess, so the princess was taking revenge on him. Eunuch Mu wiped away the tears that didn't exist. No matter what, since it was the princess's order, it must be completed seriously and perfectly. The eyes of the capital's noble families were all on Prince Kang's fu. Therefore, other than the seller, there were not many people who noticed the change in Prince Jin's fu. And the insiders were secretly pondering, could it be that because Jin Qinhuang had disposed of Prince Jin's beauties, she bought him a large number of beauties as compensation? If it was really like this, did they all misunderstand Jin Qinhuang's princess? But how could it be that Jin Qinhuang was angry and the princess did this recently? Then, Jin Qinhuang was probably lifting a stone to smash her own foot. The fun in Prince Kang's fu was enough to pass the time for a long time, and Jin Qinhuang's fu didn't seem to be outdone. Jingwan wrote and drew on the paper, "The number of people doesn't seem to be enough, ah." When Eunuch Mu heard this, he almost stumbled. It was more than the number of people who were dismissed before, but it was still not enough. "Wang Fei, what do you want to do?" On the contrary, Li Hongyuan reached out and took the paper in front of Jingwan. He glanced at it and threw it to the side. "Wang really put in a lot of effort. Why don't you spend more time on Ben Wang?" His face was gloomy and gloomy. Jingwan was speechless. She reckoned that he would only be satisfied if she constantly looked at him. Jingwan got up, hugged a certain someone, and kissed him fiercely. Seeing that a certain someone was so well behaved, it didn't matter if she coaxed him a bit more and was a bit more tolerant. And the living king of hell had always been well versed in the essence of reaching for a yard after getting an inch. And the final result, cough, everyone knew, so there was no need to say anything more. After that, it was said that Prince Kang knelt until the next day. That pair of legs had long lost feeling. If it wasn't properly treated, he might become a cripple. And according to the information that Jingwan received, this was Gong Jiu's handiwork. He suppressed Prince Kang Shizi's condition under the condition that his injuries weren't affected. In any case, his methods were brilliant enough that no one could see through it. And even if a certain imperial physician noticed something, he would absolutely not say it out loud. However, in order to prevent Prince Jin from using this as a ruse to gain sympathy, Gong Jiu gave him 2 more patches of medicine. Naturally, he wouldn't be so kind as to let him recover without leaving behind the root of the illness. It was just that he used strong medicine and left behind hidden dangers. In the future, if there were any problems with that knee, it would be very easy to cripple that pair of legs. Prince Kang might not necessarily appreciate Gong Jiu's kindness. However, if Gong Jiu wanted a person to be alive and kicking, there were still many ways. Because everyone was watching, even if Prince Kang wanted to pretend, he wouldn't be able to continue. Jingwan very much wanted to say, sure enough, like master, like subordinate. This heart, liver, and lungs were all thoroughly black. Er's condition has clearly stabilized. Is the palace going to start settling this matter? Jingwan asked Li Hongyuan. And it's about time. If you want to send someone off, you can send them off now. Receiving Li Hongyuan's affirmation, Jingwan beamed and nodded her head. She was a bit like a bad little fox. She felt that she was becoming more and more naughty. Li Hongyuan was rather fond of this small appearance of hers. Thus, a string of pink sedan chairs, beating gongs and drums, headed towards all of Prince Kang's legitimate and non-legitimate in-laws' families. The degree of liveliness was comparable to a grand wedding ceremony. The male masters of those families, as long as they hadn't separated from the family yet, from those who had just reached the age of marriage, to those who were so old that their teeth had fallen out and were paralyzed in bed, each of them had at least one beauty. And it was sent in the name of the living king of hell. Not accepting? That was not giving Prince Jean face. Were they waiting for Prince Jean to personally come, or what? https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/66541006. HTML chapter error. Click here to report registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com Mobile Edition Reading Website, mbicken.com. Chapter 381. It was reasonable to say that to cause chaos in the inner residence, it would take a period of time to ferment. After all, even if there were schemers and courtesans among them, they would need time to do something. Who would have thought that they didn't even need to lift a finger? Prince Kang's in-laws would cause a ruckus on their own. And the reason was very simple. As the saying goes, which family doesn't have a few lecherous people, and they may not have the money to go out and spend it. For some beauties, they could only drool over them, but they didn't even have the opportunity to touch their small hands. Now it was different. Someone delivered themselves to their doorstep for free. From now on, let alone touching their small hands, they could do whatever they wanted after closing the door. As a result, between brothers, between uncle and nephew, and even between father and son, there were open and covert fights. The situation could be imagined. The women in the inner residence wanted to say something, but they were righteous and confident. Prince Jean gave it to them. If you have the ability, send it back. Using this as a command arrow, it simply angered them to the point of vomiting blood. Those with cowardly personalities, or those who had long seen through it and didn't want to get involved, just let them cause a ruckus. So what if they lost face? So what if they let people see them as a joke? Their face had long been lost, so it didn't matter if they wanted to pull it out. But when they met those with a shrewish temperament, they would cry to the heavens and scramble for the earth. When Jingwan received the news, she was a little surprised. It was true that she wanted to give them a taste of their own medicine, but wasn't the effect a little too obvious? In this kind of situation, even if they didn't specifically place those people in a courtyard to raise, they should also modestly decline. How could they brazenly fight over it instead? They really didn't want face. After all, they were Prince Kang's in-laws, and directly implicated the Empress behind them. Under the circumstances of favoring clan in-laws, if one family had an accident, every family would be implicated. Even if they didn't think for themselves, they should think for others. Was it really okay to do this now? At least, after the Empress learned of this matter, she would certainly cut people down. And as the main culprit, her name would definitely be hung high in the Empress's eyes. Li Hongyuan held her hand as if he was admiring the most perfect piece of art. This is the nature of a man. How many men do you think there are in this world who are as united as your husband and only love one? Looking at this shameless man, Jingwan leaned over with a smile and held his face. Of course, this is the most precious treasure in the world. In the end, it fell into my hands. This is the blessing of 8 lifetimes. Li Hongyuan's eyes were dark. He didn't say what he was thinking, but he nodded in agreement. That's right. So, Wanwan must hold on to her tightly and cherish her. Yes, I'll definitely hold it tightly. I'll hold it in my palm, keep it in my mouth, and put it in my pocket. I'll take it with me wherever I go, as long as this treasure doesn't run away on its own. Li Hongyuan didn't think that Jingwan didn't believe him now, or that she was still worried about personal gains and losses. It was just that people's hearts were fickle. They had only been married for a little more than half a year, and there was still a long way to go in the future. If it weren't for his situation, where he had already experienced the vicissitudes of life. Even he himself wouldn't dare to say that he would be with Jingwan for the rest of his life. Li Hongyuan held her in his arms. I once said that Wan's sincerity can be exchanged for my life. These words will always be valid. Then you can see if you can wait until the day I die of old age. As long as he died of old age, his most precious treasure would definitely not run away. If he had the thought of running away, he would go to hell. You still remember? I almost forgot. Jingwan rubbed her face against the side of his face. You really forgot? Li Hongyuan expressed his doubts. Jingwan was speechless for a moment. Yuan, as a good husband, sometimes you shouldn't expose your beloved wife's white lies. Do you understand? The matter of exchanging one's heart for his life was probably engraved in one's soul. How could he forget it? If their relationship was ordinary, it might soon fade away. It was because of their deep relationship that the memory of that moment was destined to be more profound. Yes, yes, yes. I'll do whatever my beloved wife says. I'll pay attention to it in the future. Li Hongyuan laughed in spite of himself. He was indescribably gentle and affectionate. After they were done, Jingwan's IQ didn't drop. It was very likely that there was something wrong with this matter. She didn't believe that so many people had holes in their heads. There must be something fishy about it. Moreover, it was very likely that it had something to do with someone. Although he didn't say it, Jingwan could always find a breakthrough. Obviously, the lackey eunuch Mu was the best choice. Because it wasn't something that couldn't be said, eunuch Mu naturally said everything he knew. He played the role of a lackey incisively and vividly. Jingwan soon knew the cause and effect. Sure enough, there was something fishy about it. It wasn't as simple as her asking Mu to buy someone and then directly sending someone to pick them up. There was also Li Hongyuan's hand in it. Of course, his usual style was to directly give orders. As a result, the situation changed. He didn't send someone casually, but carefully. Some men always had one or two sweethearts in the red light district. They could see them, but they couldn't touch them. It was simply like a magic barrier. When the person was sent to them, they naturally didn't care and threw everything to the back of their mind. Jingwan said in her heart, this was really, in terms of black-hearted and ruthless. How many people could be compared with Jin Qinhuang? Just a small matter could make him turn over a storm. However, in the end, Li Hongyuan did it for her. Otherwise, who would do such a boring thing? Naturally, she accepted his kindness. Jin Qinhuang Fu was calm and tranquil. From top to bottom, they did what they should do. There was no impact at all. Outside, it was a complete mess. Prince Kang's righteous Yu clan, because he did not have a second wife, was naturally the only one. For such a large clan, there would definitely be a lot of disputes inside. So naturally, it would be the most lively. Of course, this liveliness was different from other clans. It was purely an internal war. It was probably because there was a second generation who had a deep Chinibu syndrome, jumping up and down, either fanning the flames or stirring up all kinds of trouble. Originally, when it was about to die down, he would reveal some shocking information that others did not know about, causing the flames of war to reignite with a whoosh, 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 whoosh. As for whether Li Hongyuan's hand was involved in this, it was unknown. After all, even eunuch Mu didn't know, so there was no way to talk about it. It hadn't even been a day, but he directly sent a plate to the palace to ask for an audience with the Empress. This kind of life was really hard to pass. In the end, this was all caused by Prince Kang. Empress, are you going to do something about it or not? As the saying goes, when one person takes the lead, others will follow suit. The concubines in Prince Kang's harem also had high and low family backgrounds. Some of them came from the lower class, and naturally didn't even have a maternal family. The highest ranking among them was probably a third or fourth rank official. They weren't even related to their father. But at this time, there was no doubt that they were harmed. How could they ignore it and watch with folded arms? Look for the Empress. Look for the Empress. Together, together. If they didn't give an explanation, naturally, they shouldn't expect them to not do things diligently in the future. Originally, Jingwen didn't want to do anything to Prince Kang's other, Sifei, who was abandoned by the family. However, because they came from Chun family, noble consort Su's hardcore supporters, if they abandoned this family and didn't send beauties, wouldn't it tell outsiders that their husband was actually on Prince Rue's side? That was absolutely impossible. Therefore, this Chun family couldn't find Emperor's son, so they went to find noble consort Su. If it didn't involve the Chun family, noble consort Su would definitely watch a good show. The more fun Emperor's son had, the happier she would be. Although she didn't want to admit it, if it was just a one-on-one competition, she was probably not Emperor's son's opponent. However, no matter how powerful Emperor's son was, she couldn't withstand her stupid son, who specialized in making things difficult for her. This pig teammate could even drag God down from the altar. But now, she couldn't sit still. She had seen the power of a pig teammate. The trouble caused by this daughter-in-law was an indiscriminate attack. The only difference was whether one was involved or not. Those who weren't involved didn't have any benefits at all. If one was too focused on watching the show, he or she might accidentally be involved. It was just that the people watching the show hadn't realized this yet. Noble consort Su's endurance was not as good as Emperor's son's. Even if she was not well recently and was in low spirits, when she heard her cousin-in-law, the wife of the right governor, and the other two daughters-in-law of the Chun family crying, her temples couldn't help but twitch and hurt badly. Annoyed by the crying, she directly smashed the cup. The crying in the Jade Essence Palace abruptly stopped. What does this Lady Luo want to do? She's causing trouble one after another. Is there no end to it? The women below let out a sigh of relief. They thought that noble consort Su was angry at them, but they didn't dare to continue crying. Noble consort, what should we do? If this continues, we won't be able to do anything. Noble consort, Su rubbed her temples. Come, summon Jean Wangfei to the palace. No, summon old Madame Luo to the palace. Noble consort, Su thought about how she was angered to the point of vomiting blood by old Six's daughter-in-law. In the end, her son still helped his wife. She hadn't seen her son these days, and she didn't want to see that daughter-in-law of hers. Therefore, she had to find someone who could definitely control her. Without a doubt, old Madame Luo was the best choice. Although old Madame Luo had been sitting at home these days, she was very clear about what was going on outside. However, she was calm and unperturbed. At the same time, she was prepared to be invited to the palace. Therefore, when the people from the Jade Essence Palace came, she wasn't surprised. She changed her clothes, brought along a servant girl, and entered the palace in an unusually free and easy manner. After all, she was a woman appointed by the imperial court, and her husband was the minister of the Ministry of Appointments. Noble consort, Su naturally had to be polite. She let the servants serve tea, wore a warm smile, and inquired about her well-being. Only then did she tell the purpose of the lovers' attack. Old Madame Luo's face was filled with astonishment. Wasn't it said that Jean Qinhuang was also the one who sent it? How did it involve Jean Wangfei? Jean Wangfei was brought up by this noble consort. This noble consort is very clear about her temperament. She definitely wouldn't do such an improper thing. On the other hand, Jean Qinhuang Yi, as far as this noble consort knows, he often does this kind of thing in the past. This time, it will definitely be the same. Noble consort Su suppressed the old blood in her heart. Yuan only occasionally sends one or two. Those are basically between the imperial family. Even if it's someone with a different surname, most of them are the prince consort and Juema. He is a bit careless, but he disdains to send people to the families of those low-ranking officials. Old Six's wife had personally said at Prince Kang's fu that this matter isn't over. Noble consort Su stirred the tea. Bengong doesn't have any other meaning. I just want old madam to advise old Six's wife. Prince Kong has angered her, and it's over after venting her anger. This woman has a bit of a temper and is a bit jealous. This is a very normal thing, but there should be a limit to it. Don't make everyone's face look bad. So to say, noble consort Nyang Yang also thinks that Prince Kong sending molesters to Jin Qinhuang Yi is the same as sending ordinary beauties, and doesn't have any other meaning? Jin Qinhuang Fei is using this as an excuse because she's jealous? Noble consort Nyang Yang can guarantee that Prince Kong really doesn't have any bad intentions? If Jin Qinhuang Fei doesn't deal with the person, if something happens in the end, who is to blame? Right now, Jin Qinhuang Fu only has Jin Qinhuang Fei as the mistress. If something happens, does she still want her face? Does she still want to live? For the sake of the imperial family's face, would they push all the blame onto her head, saying that she didn't abide by the virtues of a woman and had an affair? Jin Qinhuang Fei is a daughter from the Luo family. How should the Luo family deal with it? Chen Fu even suspects that this is a plot against Jin Qinhuang Fei, against the Luo family. It's fine if noble consort Nyang Yang doesn't uphold justice for your own daughter-in-law, but instead, you're blaming Jin Qinhuang Fei. You. At this moment, old Madame Luo wasn't as amiable as before. She was also respectful towards noble consort Su, and her words carried coldness. Noble consort Su was blocked to the point that she couldn't speak. She stiffly tugged at the corner of her mouth. It's not to that extent, noble consort Nyang Yang. As the saying goes, one shouldn't have the heart to harm others, but one must have the heart to guard against others. What kind of situation is it now? Everyone is clear. Some things can be investigated after it has happened. Even if some people get punished, it's useless. Everyone understood the reasoning, but this matter, old Madame Luo, we're talking about the matter of Jin Qinhuang Fei sending the beauty. The daughter-in-law of the Chun family saw that noble consort Su was speechless and spoke up. I also said that the one who sent the beauty was Jin Qinhuang Yi. If you want a reason, shouldn't it be Jin Qinhuang Yi? But this matter was done by Jin Qinhuang Fei. Where's the evidence? Old Madame Luo lightly glanced at the other party. Everything needs to be based on solid evidence. Don't speak without thinking. Jin Qinhuang Yi has no reason to do this. The other party persisted. Old Madame Luo chuckled, but it was indescribably mocking. Jin Qinhuang Yi has done many things in the past. Does he have a reason for everything he does? Otherwise, he would have directly called Jin Qinhuang Yi and Wang Fei into the palace to confront each other. So it could be said that with Jin Qinhuang Yi's black reputation, no matter what was pushed onto him, it could be said that he was a professional scapegoat. Of course, he had always been the scapegoat for his own wife. If other people wanted him to be the scapegoat, the result would definitely be extremely miserable. This time, no one spoke again. The people below all looked at Imperial Concubine Su at the same time. Imperial Concubine Su only felt that her head hurt even more. Her son simply refused to see her. If she forcefully called him into the palace, it could be said that there would be another knot that had not been removed before. This was absolutely not what Imperial Concubine Su wanted to see. Moreover, even if they really confronted each other, if he said that he did it, then what should she do? In the past, there were many more disgraceful things than this, but in the end, didn't they just leave it unsettled? Imperial Concubine Nyang Yang. This subject's wife has to say, although this matter seems to be big, in essence, it is just a trivial matter. The families who received the beauty, because it was Jin Qinhuang Yi who sent her, it was not easy to refuse. However, Jin Qinhuang Yi did not forcefully stuff her into those men's beds. He just casually found a place to raise her. As the saying goes, a cow does not drink water. Can it be forced to drink water? There are many officials in the capital. Every day, there may be people who send people away, and there may be people who receive people. But there has never been a farce in those people's homes. Now, these families are in a mess. In the end, it's still those men's own problems. They only know how to find excuses from others and never face their own problems. It's really unreasonable. Old Madame Luo's words hit the root of the problem. It also made the Chun family's daughters-in-law blush, including the right governor's wife. Originally, it had nothing to do with her, but because she was a sister-in-law, she couldn't stand their pleas and made a trip. But now, it made her so ashamed that she was unable to show her face. This subject's wife sees that Imperial Concubine Yang Yang seems to be tired. If there is nothing else, this subject's wife will take her leave first, so as not to delay imperial concubine Yangyang's rest. No matter what happens, a person's body is their biggest asset. If the body collapses, then nothing can be done. Old Madame Luo's words were sincere, because she herself was the best example. She had nothing to worry about now, and could be considered to be enjoying her remaining years. Jingwan was married, and her husband treated her very well. Now, she wanted to see Jingwan's child be born and didn't want Jingwan to worry. Therefore, she had always paid attention to her body. Imperial concubine Su nodded. Many thanks for old Madame's concern. Ben Gong will have someone send you out of the palace. Old Madame Luo gave her thanks, turned around, and calmly left. The remaining Qin family's daughters-in-law looked at each other in dismay. Imperial concubine Nyang. Imperial concubine Su waved her hand. With old Madame Luo's comparison, she felt more and more that these people didn't have any eyesight. You all heard it. This matter is unreasonable no matter how you talk about it. You all should also go back. Properly managing your own men is the right thing to do. If you can't lock them up, then it's your own problem. Ben Gong is tired. She couldn't really go find Jin Qinhuang, so this matter could only be left unsettled. Therefore, she sullenly asked Imperial concubine Su to take her leave. However, after listening to old Madame Luo's words, Imperial concubine Su's heart also settled down. The Empress wouldn't find trouble with her. Therefore, after all was said and done, the most serious problem in this matter seemed to be that the eldest grandson of the Emperor almost lost his hearing. But now that he had received treatment, he could recover. The main culprit was Kang Qinhuang. Lu Qingdi had already punished a portion of them. As for the rest, it could only be clear when the time came. As for Jin Qinhuang's matter, it seemed to be very serious. However, just as she said, Jin Qinhuang didn't say anything. So why would other people meddle in it? Even if she was in the wrong, and Lu Qingdi didn't make a move, no matter how much other people jumped around, it was useless. What was the reason for all parties to move together? After old Madame Luo left the palace, she didn't directly return to the Luo residence. Instead, she went to Jin Qinhuang Fu. Although she knew that Jingwan's actions were within her control, and that Jin Qinhuang was controlling things from behind, nothing would happen. But, one after another, popping up from time to time still made people unable to stop worrying. When old Madame Luo went to Jin Qinhuang Fu, she didn't need a visiting card. She respectfully welcomed people in and quickly sent someone to report to Li Honyuan and Jingwan. Speaking of which, it was the first time that old Madame Luo entered Jin Qinhuang Fu. Not to mention other things, just by looking at the overall layout, she could see Jin Qinhuang's intentions toward his granddaughter. In old Madame Luo's view, as long as their relationship was good, it didn't matter if there were more messy matters. In just this short period of time, she had already decided not to ask what they were going to do, or what they were doing. When Jingwan saw old Madame Luo, she quickly went up to greet her. She didn't want greetings, or anything. Both sides didn't need to. Although Li Hongyuan was a super vinegar jar, he wasn't to the extent that he didn't leave this space for Jingwan. After saying a few words to old Madame Luo, he turned and left. Don't look at how he was very idle all day long. In fact, he had a lot of things to do. If he really wanted to do everything by himself, 24 hours a day wasn't enough. Jingwan could guess the purpose of her grandmother's visit, but now, she didn't even mention half a word. Jingwan also didn't take the initiative to bring it up. Jingwan held old Madame Luo's arm and took her to walk around the garden. There are a lot of famous treasures in the Fu. Some can be split and some seeds have been collected. After next spring, we should be able to get some new plants. At that time, we'll send a few more pots to grandfather. Why do you care about him? If he really gets your flowers and plants, who knows how he'll show them off to others? Jingwan chuckled. Speaking of which, grandfather doesn't have any other preferences. What he likes is just what I'm good at. They all say that old children are old children. The older they get, the younger they get. Grandfather has never been careless about important matters. Showing off the flowers and plants is nothing serious. That's the reason, so I'm too lazy to care about him. He can do whatever he wants. Grandmother, you don't have to worry about me. Everything will be taken care of by the prince. According to my temperament, it's better to live my own life quietly. There are some things that don't need to be said. She would only feel helpless if she said too much. How could old Madame Luo not know that Jingwan was a person who didn't look for trouble? The prince's mansion was clean. There was no need for her to make trouble for others. Old Madame Luo basically understood all the unsaid words. However, she might have misunderstood a little. In her opinion, Li Hongyuan wanted everyone to focus on Jingwan so that she could do something in secret. Even if she protected Jingwan well and didn't let her get hurt, old Madame Luo still felt a little angry in her heart. Jingwan didn't know what old Madame Luo was thinking. Naturally, she wouldn't explain because no one would believe her if she said it. Just because he wanted to see that his wife cared about him very much, it was not enough to talk about it. He needed to do something to prove it. It was so childish and made people speechless. Ordinary people wouldn't do it. However, Li Hongyuan was right. She didn't want outsiders to know that her husband was sick. As for what old Madame Luo thought, before old Madame Luo left, Li Hongyuan came out to see her off. This was a bit unexpected for old Madame Luo. After all, he was a prince. There was no need for him to do so. However, she understood the reason immediately. In the end, it was because of Jingwan. Her previous anger dissipated a little. However, she still found an excuse to send Jingwan away. How could Jingwan not understand? She was very cooperative. His Highness asked Jingwan to create trouble. No matter what his purpose is behind it, I hope that you can make sure that Wanwan is safe. Because of you, she has a bad reputation. I also hope that you don't let her down. If you didn't get her in the first place, it wouldn't be a big deal. However, if you get her and lose her, it will be an extremely painful thing. I know very well that His Highness is not a kind person, nor is he a person who values relationships. However, since you have given Wanwan a gentleness that no one else has, it doesn't matter whether the dream you once said was true or not. It means that she is indeed different to you. I hope that this friendship can continue. Even if you lie to her, please lie to her for a long time. It would be best for a lifetime. Li Hongyuan listened to old Madame Luo quietly. He didn't care about old Madame Luo's doubts and doubts about him. He only cared about Jingwan's thoughts. And what old Madame Luo thought was not completely wrong. However, that was just Li Hongyuan's purpose. Because there would be a war in the northeast border city this winter, it was not easy to secretly increase military supplies. Although it was more or less ready, he couldn't relax until the last step. If there was a little mistake, his plan might be exposed. It was not impossible to seize the throne now, but it was not a good time. Once there was internal turmoil and external war, the troubles would multiply. Not to mention, he originally estimated that the war might be brought forward this year. Because he and Jingwan stayed in Jiangnan, he made arrangements. Looking at the current situation, the time of the war would basically coincide with the time in his previous life. It was impossible to push it back. After all, Li Hongyuan was a human and not a god. It was already good enough that he could control the situation this year, and it was closely related to another country. In his previous life, Fu Yunting held on for a year and was defeated by their own people. Li Hongyuan wanted to save the lives of 200,000 to 300,000 soldiers. It was not something that could be done with just a few words. Moreover, there was still no clue as to why his father wanted to exterminate Fu Yunting's family. Of course, there was the possibility that Li Hongyuan did not investigate carefully. All of these things had to be carried out in secret. Therefore, it was better if there was someone to distract his attention. If it was not his wife, he would have created another incident. However, because of what Jingwan did, he did not divert his attention to plot. Don't say that Li Hongyuan was the idle king, and no one paid attention to him. In fact, some of the things he did were already exposed. After all, it had been several years. If no one noticed at all, then his opponents were really a group of idiots. Currently, they had not found him. As the saying goes, it is better to be safe than sorry. It was good that someone was disrupting their line of sight. After all, Li Hongyuan had such a troublesome wife. Even if he did not give up some of his suspicions, he would still lower his guard. Therefore, Li Hongyuan did not deny Madame Luo's opinion. It's just empty talk. Madame Luo, you just have to wait and see. Therefore, it is better for you to live a long life. Wan Wan's thoughts are the same. This old woman of mine is doing well. Prince and princess consort, you don't have to worry. That can't be better. Jing Wan appeared at the right time, and then sent Madame Luo out of the prince's mansion. Of course, she still prepared a lot of things. For example, there were many good medicinal herbs in the gifts sent by the He family. Half of them were given, and the palace did not have a share. However, the He family must have prepared more for Luqingdi. After sending Madame Luo away, Jingwan put her hands on her hips and said fiercely, "Tell me honestly, what did grandmother say to you?" Li Honyuan smiled enchantingly and brushed his fingertips across Jingwan's face. He lowered his voice. "Wanwan, what did your grandmother say to me?" Jingwan felt that her ears were about to become pregnant. Bastard, this trick again. Every time it was like this, but she could not resist it. She slapped his hand away. "I'm too lazy to talk to you." She turned and walked away. She could basically imagine what her grandmother would say. Li Honyuan rubbed his fingers as if he was reminiscing. He followed Jingwan slowly with a smile. Li Honyuan knew what would happen to noble consort Su. He also believed in Madame Luo's fighting ability. With his own reasons, noble consort Su would not care. However, the Empress would definitely not let it go. Even if she knew that Jingwan was wrong in this matter, her attitude would not be the same as noble consort Su's because this matter concerned her face and even her status. No matter how much she could bear it, she could not bear it. If she did not do anything, she would only be ridiculed by the concubines. They would think that she was not so capable. If an empress who was not valued by the emperor lost her prestige in the harem, the consequences could be imagined. Therefore, she made the empress seriously ill not only to break Prince Kang's arm, but also for Jingwan. Empress Sun was too shrewd. When she really planned something, she might not be able to completely prevent it. Just when Prince Kang's condition was stable, and he only needed to take medicine for a period of time to recover, there was suddenly news from the palace that the empress vomited blood and fainted. She was in great pain. Prince Kang's heir apparent's injury could cause quite a commotion. The empress's sudden illness naturally made people feel even more anxious, especially those in Prince Kang's faction. To a certain extent, Prince Kang might be the center, but the empress was their stabilizing force. With Prince Kang's temperament and ability, if it was not for the empress, the number of people who supported him would be reduced by at least 2/3. It could be said that without the empress, Prince Kang absolutely had no hope. Prince Kang's understanding of this point might not be very clear, but he vaguely understood. So he panicked all of a sudden and did not think about anything else. He hurriedly rushed to the palace. The 2 or 3 imperial physicians who were still in Prince Kang Fu also entered the palace at this time. As for Gong Jiu, no one allowed him to go together. After all, the palace was not an ordinary place. With his status, he naturally could not go in at will. Moreover, even if he wanted to go in, it would be Li Hongyuan who brought him, not Prince Kang nor the imperial physicians. Because Yuji are only needed to continue taking medicine, Gong Jiu returned to Prince Jin Fu. Li Hongyuan leisurely flipped through a book and asked him to prepare before following him into the palace. Gong Jiu complied. Those who did not want anything to happen to the empress were not only those in Prince Kang's faction, but also noble consort Su and the others. If the empress fell, then the balance in the harem would be broken. There would be no one else who could compete with noble consort Su. The older emperor Lu Chungat, the more suspicious he became. He did not want to give up the position below him and would not sit by and watch this kind of situation. If he wanted to establish the balance, then he could only let noble consort Su fall. The other imperial concubines could not see through the stakes in this, and would also think that without the empress, noble consort Su's family would be the most powerful. They would have plenty of time and energy, and it would only be more difficult for them. Therefore, no one really wanted anything to happen to the Empress at this time. It was just that when Jingwan looked at Li Hongyuan again, there was a bit of admiration in her eyes. To make the Empress fall ill just like that, this ability, after tidying up properly, he slowly entered the palace. His speed was about the same as his other adult brothers. However, as the center of attention during this period of time, Jingwan naturally attracted a lot of attention. Jingwan, on the other hand, acted as if nothing had happened. Many people secretly said in their hearts, just this kind of composure is really amazing. As the mother of the country, many people naturally rushed over at the first moment, but there were even more people who wanted to go, but could not. Therefore, when Jingwan and the others arrived at Kunyi Palace, all the people who lived in the palace who could have a place were all present. No matter what they seemed to be thinking, they all showed some real or fake worry on the surface. Some even used their handkerchiefs to wipe the corners of their eyes from time to time. Jingwan quietly followed Li Hongyuan. Anyway, they could not see the Empress at this time. They only needed to wait outside. As for how long they had to wait and whether they could see the Empress, it was another matter. As for whether they, as the daughters-in-law, would serve the Empress, it was up to Emperor Lu Cheng to decide. However, under normal circumstances, even if the Empress woke up, she would not do such a thing to offend people. Noble consort Su saw Jingwan and the others as soon as they came in and went forward somewhat anxiously. Yuan greetings to Imperial Mother. Jingwan followed Li Hongyuan and bowed to her. Quickly rise. Noble consort Su stretched out her hand. Probably because she thought of the current situation, she only helped her up slightly. Noble consort Su sized up Li Hongyuan. She looked as if she was ill from longing. Li Hongyuan frowned slightly. Imperial Mother's complexion is not very good. Is she feeling unwell? Did you ask the Imperial physician to take a look? What medicine did she take? Li Hongyuan's concern almost made noble consort Su cry. No, Imperial Mother is fine. Yuan you don't have to worry. This son has also brought the estate's physician. Let him take Imperial Mother's pulse. This way, this son can be more at ease. Okay, as you wish. Noble consort Su wanted to mention the unhappiness between them, but when the words reached her mouth, she swallowed them back and changed to a more tactful way of saying, it's just that Yuan hasn't entered the palace to see Imperial Mother for a long time. It's this son's fault. This son has been a little busy recently, but now that I'm done, I can enter the palace to see Imperial Mother at any time. When Imperial Mother wants to see this son, you can send someone to inform this son. The meaning behind his words couldn't be more obvious. Noble consort Su was naturally happy that her son no longer avoided her, but she also knew very well that there was already a gap between them, and she was afraid that it wouldn't disappear. Noble consort Su didn't have the courage to touch it and tear open the scar because she wasn't sure if it would heal bit by bit or worsen even more after tearing it open. So she could only maintain the status quo. Afterwards, noble consort Su pulled Li Hongyuan aside and chatted with him. Perhaps it was because Li Hongyuan was protecting Jingwan and didn't have a good impression of Jingwan, but for the sake of her son, she still said a few words to Jingwan. Jingwan responded with ease. As for the relationship between her and noble consort Su, who would care about the true relationship between them? Noble consort Su discovered that when she spoke with Jingwan, the aura on her son's body was clearly gentler. In her opinion, this son still hoped that the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law could get along well, so she endured the unhappiness in her heart and chatted with Jingwan more. Jingwan saw this and understood that she was in the palm of her son's hand. It could even be said that she was being toyed with. To be honest, noble consort Su, as a mother, was actually quite bitter and sullen. However, Jingwan didn't sympathize with her. It could only be said that noble consort Su reaped what she sowed. It was either wholeheartedly good or it was business and didn't get emotional. Noble consort Su chose to be in the middle, so no matter what fruit she bore, she would eat it herself. Many people were paying attention to them. Among them, the most unpredictable one was probably Li Hongming. After this incident, he roughly understood one thing. His mother regarded him as the heir and Li Hongyuan as her son. There was naturally a difference between the two, and sometimes the difference was very big. In the past, he would be jealous, but in the future, he would work hard to correct his attitude. After all, Li Hongyuan had helped him, so he should still thank him. He hadn't found the opportunity before, so he had to do it as soon as possible. Princess Consort Rui saw everything. She lowered her eyebrows and didn't say a word. Greetings to Imperial Father. These words alarmed the others. Then, they all saw Lu Chengdi coming out of the Empress's bedchamber and greeted him one after another. Lu Chengdi nodded indifferently. You may dispense with the formalities. Then his eyes fell on Li Hongyuan. Sixth brother, where is the doctor in your mansion? Let him enter the palace and take a look at the Empress. Anyway, Gong Jiu's medical skills had been shown once by Prince Kang's heir and had been recognized by the imperial doctors. Naturally, no one would say anything at this moment. When I entered the palace, I brought him with me. He is now outside the hall. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6654112. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 382. The princess consort was the one who asked me to bring the physician. It has nothing to do with this son. This son originally thought that with so many imperial physicians, it would be fine if they couldn't treat Yu Ji'er's injury, but it wouldn't be to the extent that they couldn't do anything about the Empress's illness. However, Wang Fei said that they should be prepared for emergencies. It would be best if there was no need, but if there was a need, it would be to avoid wasting time. Looking at it now, she was right. Li Hongyuan said indifferently. However, anyone could hear the sarcasm in his words. The corner of Lu Chengdi's mouth twitched. Did he have to be so honest? However, on second thought, this vile spawn really wasn't attentive enough to care for others. Other than the imperial consort, including him, it was already good enough for him to come and take a look at him at the first moment. However, in the end, it was his own fault for spoiling him. Who could he blame? Old sixth wife, you're too considerate. You probably worried a lot when you met this bastard. You should be more forgiving. If it was any other son, Lu Chengdi wouldn't say such words. However, this son of his was really troublesome. Although he was thick-skinned, he would only praise him when he had no choice but to. Under normal circumstances, he was too embarrassed to say such words. Imperial Father is too kind. His Highness is very good. Jingwan lowered her head. These words were the truth. It wasn't just Lu Chengdi who was affected, but also Jingwan. A certain person's image was really deeply ingrained in people's hearts. It made those who were closest to him in this world think that he was unreliable. The degree of his foolishness had already broken through the sky. Well, if Lu Chengdi knew his son's true appearance, what kind of feelings would he have? What kind of expression would he have? Would he be more angry at being deceived, or would he be more comforted? Also, she did have the intention to bring Gong Jiu along. However, before she could say it, a certain person had already arranged everything. Well, she would feel embarrassed if he put all the blame on her, even though she wouldn't blush. She had gained a good impression in front of Lu Chengdi, but it would probably also gain a bad impression from other people. After all, if it was Li Hongyuan who did this, they probably wouldn't have any reaction, because nothing he did could be judged with common sense. However, it was different if it was her. She might be thought to have sinister intentions, especially in noble consort Su's heart. She was so filial to the Empress, but so unfilial to her thinking about this. Jingwan's heart was a little messy. Well, it doesn't matter. If the soldiers come, the husband will block them. If the water comes, the husband will cover it. Now, Jingwan was quite self-aware. You don't have to put in a good word for him. I know better than you what kind of character he is. Lu Qingdi waved his hand. You really don't know anything. Jingwan did not try to defend herself. After all, this did not matter to a certain someone. It did not matter at all. Gong Jiu was called into the hall. He was well behaved and didn't look sideways. It was just that his etiquette was a little lacking. Jingwan saw this and was slightly surprised. It was reasonable to say that Gong Jiu's etiquette was absolutely passable. However, since he was brought back from the outside, his perfect etiquette was a flaw. If people noticed it, it might arouse suspicion. At that time, he might really be thought to have ulterior motives. She didn't know if it was a Yuan who reminded him, or Gong Jiu himself who noticed this. At least, Jingwan herself only reacted when she saw Gong Jiu salute. Therefore, no matter who it was, it could only mean that she was far from enough. Lu Qingdi already knew that the new Fu doctor of Jin Qin Wang Fu was young, but after seeing the person, he was still a little surprised. Although it was said that those who reached the top were the seniors, but in some industries, being young would still be looked down upon. If it wasn't because he was Prince Kang's Shitsi, Gong Jiu definitely wouldn't be able to stand here easily. Lu Qingdi let people bring him in, while he himself sat down in the outer hall. In addition to Prince Kang, all of Lu Qingdi's children, daughters-in-law, son-in-law, and concubines were present. As for the grandchildren, as long as they could walk, they were also present. The number of legitimate children and concubines was not small, so it looked a little crowded. After that, it was estimated that the princesses and fumas of the same generation as Lu Qingdi, as well as the people with status in the Li clan, would also enter the palace. This number of people was enough to give people a headache. Lu Qingdi waved his hand to let all the concubines return to their own palaces and take away all the younger generation. It wasn't that no one wanted to express their worry or filial piety, but when Lu Qingdi swept a cold glance at them, whether it was their expression or their movements, they all froze and then resentfully left. Jingwan followed Li Hongyuan to Su Gui Fei's Yuchui Palace. In addition to the two of them, there was naturally also Prince Rui, Prince Rui's Qin Wang Fei, and their two children, as well as Princess Min Xiang and her Fuma. Princess Min Xiang was Su Gui Fei's beloved daughter and was naturally doted on. The status of the Fuma she chose was naturally about the same as the other princesses. The difference was that Princess Min Xiang was very overbearing. She didn't even think about being a concubine and had a high and mighty attitude when facing her Fuma, as if that wasn't her husband, but a male pet she raised. She could summon him and send him away as she pleased. The fifth Fuma was also submissive and had an appearance of being bullied. Ever since Princess Min Xiang got married, she had been living in her own residence. Her parents-in-law, mother-in-law, and the Fuma's uncles and elders, not to mention filial piety, had to respectfully bow to her every time they saw her. When she needed them for something, they had to send people to see her. They were also arrogant and bossy. Actually, these weren't all that much. The most outrageous thing was that Princess Min Xiang didn't want to have children now. When she got pregnant, she aborted the child with 1 dose of medicine. She didn't even hide it from her Fuma. After drinking the medicine, the child was gone. Looking at the fuming Fuma, she even sneered and called him a good-for-nothing, and a useless man. Everyone paid attention to inheritance and heirs. It could be imagined how infuriating Princess Min Xiang's actions were. At that time, the servant girls and nannies serving her were a bit alarmed, afraid that the Fuma would explode. After all, Princess Min Xiang didn't want to have children and didn't allow the Fuma to touch other people. What was the difference between this and cutting off one's heirs? Even if she was a princess, it was her fault that such a thing happened. No matter how much Su Gui Fei doted on her, she couldn't openly side with her in this matter. In the end, the fifth Fuma endured it. When the fifth Fuma stepped out of Princess Min Xiang's room, Princess Min Xiang even said to her nannies, "See, I knew this good-for-nothing wouldn't dare to do anything. From then on, Princess Min Xiang became more and more arrogant. Even the people around her all recognized the fifth Fuma as a good-for-nothing and didn't treat him as a master. Every time they met, it was already good enough that they could greet him hastily. Princess Min Xiang didn't like him but liked to cause trouble. She would call him to the princess residence every day. Even if it was out of 10 times, she wouldn't see him at least 6 or 7 times. She even made the fifth Fuma kneel in front of her room all night long. Also, she allowed her subordinates to ask for benefits from the Fuma. After Princess Min Xiang had dealt with the Fuma, she wasn't stingy with the benefits that she should give to his family. Or it could be said that she was using this method to tell the Fuma how capable she was. If he wanted to resist her, he had to weigh his own weight first. Other than that, only the parents of the fifth prince consort knew a little about the situation, but they didn't make it public. As for the other elders, they had very little contact with them. Their impression was that Princess Min Xiang was probably not very close to people. But thinking that she was a princess and was of noble descent, it was most likely normal. It probably wasn't because of Princess Min Xiang's generosity. Therefore, this extremely illogical couple, in the eyes of outsiders, was actually harmonious and deeply in love with each other. Noble consort Su was a person who took care of everything. If she knew that her daughter was like this after getting married, it would be like tearing her face clean, throwing her on the ground and stepping on her before sending her into the smelly ditch. Who knew what expression she would have? However, she still thought that her daughter was very good and was sensible after getting married. Jingwan noticed that her husband's gaze lingered on Princess Min Xiang and her husband for a moment. Jingwan also looked over and took a few more glances. There didn't seem to be anything special. Li Honyuan saw the confusion in Jingwan's eyes. He only smiled and didn't say anything. Speaking of which, the affairs of the world were really unpredictable. In the previous life, Princess Min Xiang's Fuma was Chen Jingmin. She ruined Chen Jingmin's future, while Princess Min Xiang was in Chen Jingmin's hands. She was as obedient as she could be. Even if Chen Jingmin didn't treat her well, she didn't even dare to tell her mother. Now, the fifth Fuma was like this. However, no matter how cowardly a man was, there were some things that he wouldn't tolerate. Once he tolerated and gave way, then there must be a reason for his tolerance. Unfortunately, Princess Min Xiang didn't know this. On one hand, she felt that she had been wronged by marrying such a man. On the other hand, she enjoyed the sense of accomplishment of completely controlling this man. Princess Min Xiang feared Li Honyuan from the bottom of her bones. Therefore, when she met Li Hongyuan's gaze, she couldn't help but shrink back. The fifth Fuma saw this. He never knew that this arrogant and despotic Princess Min Xiang, who could act obediently in front of the emperor, actually had someone who was afraid of her. It was really a rare thing. Speaking of which, the living king of Hell's reputation was very great in the capital. However, his relationship with noble consort Su and her son had always been good. Although he didn't seem to get along well with Prince Rue, he didn't hear of any discord between him and Princess Min Xiang. Thinking about himself, the fifth Fuma felt that there might be something that no one knew about. However, this wasn't something that he dared to investigate. He also didn't have the ability. Her daughter was inexplicably afraid of her adopted son. Noble consort Su was also very helpless. It wasn't that she couldn't think of a way to get them closer. Getting closer didn't have any effect. Noble consort Su sat down on the main seat with a joyful smile. It's rare for all of you to gather together. Now that we're in Jade Essence Palace, there's no need to restrain yourselves. The people below all agreed one after another. There were some things that they didn't want to talk about, and some things that weren't good to talk about. Everyone talked about things that wouldn't make others unhappy or taboo. As a result, the scene was quite harmonious and casual. Jingwan liked naive and cute children. Even if they were naughty, they were quite likable when they weren't naughty. As for Prince Rue's 2 children, they had been taught very well by Princess Rue. It was just that they were a bit quieter and lacked the liveliness that children should have. Jingwan knew that noble consort Su didn't like her and didn't want to annoy her. She would also feel annoyed by those hypocritical pleasantries. Thus, she bluntly called the two children to her side and let someone deal with noble consort Su. In any case, noble consort Su probably just wanted to talk to her son. Jingwan then asked the palace servants of the Jade Essence Palace to bring over some small objects. There were large and small objects, and even some beads. The two children were already past the age where they would casually stuff anything into their mouths, so Jingwan didn't have to worry about anything. She just played with the two children. At the beginning, the two children were still a little reserved and occasionally glanced at their mother. Seeing that Jingwan had so many tricks in her hands, they gradually forgot. From time to time, they could hear children's words like, "Wow, sixth aunt, you're so awesome," and so on. Their faces were unusually bright. Jingwan gently scratched their little noses and quickly used the beads to string out a lifelike small animal. Otherwise, she would use all kinds of rags to piece together, cut, and sew. A cute doll appeared. Although Jingwan's embroidery skills were terrible, basic sewing was not a problem for her. Otherwise, she would draw very simple pictures with some cartoon shapes. The kittens and puppies on the paper were in all kinds of poses and charmingly naive. The simple background layout looked very interesting, and the children couldn't be more fond of it. It was one thing for her to do it herself, but she also taught the two children to do it together. However, it was not a rigid rule. It was their own play. Even if they did something wrong, she could turn waste into treasure. In a second, Princess Rui looked at her two daughters, who were smiling very happily. Her eyes became gloomy more than once. She really rarely saw her daughters smiling like this. The things that Jingwan made were very simple, and most of the maids could do it. When they were in the prince's mansion, the maids also played with them. However, compared with Jingwan, the maids were more serious and less childlike. There were only a few tricks, and there were not many changes. Moreover, when the maids played with them, they never dared to let them hold the scissors by themselves. They could only watch. Naturally, the fun was one level lower. Jingwan was patient and careful. Not only did Princess Rui notice it, but the others also gradually stopped talking and focused their attention on them. Sixth sister-in-law, you seem to still be childlike. When you have children in the future, we can play together. Princess Minxiang pursed her lips and smiled. However, there was not a single person present who did not understand the euphemism. She was married, had a child, and even played with the child. What was that called? To put it nicely, she was still childish. To put it bluntly, she had not grown up. In this way, how could she serve her husband well? How could she be filial to her parents-in-law? Under normal circumstances, no elder would like her to have an innocent daughter-in-law. However, Princess Minxiang wasn't a mother and didn't know that some things couldn't be seen only once. She also didn't know that no matter if it was Princess Rui or noble consort Su, when they saw the two children's smiles, their hearts were indescribable. Didn't she see how much noble consort Su disliked Jingwan and didn't say a word at this moment? She also did not know that her words made the king of hell, who she was most afraid of, remember her words. Li Hongyuan was originally a narrow-minded person, especially when it came to Jingwan. Even if she said the word no to Jingwan, he might take revenge on her at any time. Speaking of which, Princess Minxiang did not have a good impression of Jingwan. It was mainly because noble consort Su said a few words in front of her a few days ago. In fact, according to noble consort Su's character, she was not the kind of person who gossiped behind others' backs. Even if she made her opponent look bad in front of Luqingdi, she was quite skillful. Therefore, she did not say anything. However, Princess Minxiang misunderstood her. Li Hongyuan glanced at her coldly. Minxiang is married and has grown up. It is not difficult for her to take care of her husband and children, serve her parents-in-law, and take care of her aunts and uncles. As you said, your sixth sister-in-law has not grown up yet, so there is no need to be too calculative about many things. Princess Minxiang subconsciously shrank, and Li Hongyuan's following words made her feel even more uncomfortable. No one knew better than herself what she was like after she got married. It could be said that Li Hongyuan's every word poked at her weak spot, making her feel guilty and short of breath. She did not even dare to refute. Noble consort Su also knew that her adopted son was very protective of his daughter-in-law, and probably treated her very well. Although she did not know what her daughter was like after she got married, she could hear his sarcasm towards her daughter. She even felt that his following words were actually for her. However, now, noble consort Su was also short of breath in front of Li Hongyuan. Your sixth sister-in-law likes children. When you have children in the future, it will be the same. Children were not an existence that could be mentioned to Princess Minxiang. After doing such a thing, she could not be righteous, so she did not dare to say anything. Thus, Princess Minxiang's abnormality was naturally noticed, and it was not only noble consort Su. Minxiang, what's wrong? Are you hiding something from mother? Princess Minxiang had a powerful backer in the palace, and basically did not know how to restrain herself or look at other people's faces. Compared to those princesses who did not have a mother and did not have any favor, she was simply a naive and sweet girl. Of course, it was the kind that was absolutely derogatory. Thus, she could not hide anything at all. When noble consort Su asked this, she appeared to be at a loss. Then, she subconsciously looked at the prince consort beside her. Her face was a little pale, but there was a warning in her eyes and a pleading that she did not realize. Because of the angle other than the fifth prince consort, only Jingwan saw it when she looked up unintentionally. Now, she was 100% sure that there was a problem between this couple, and it was not a small problem. The eldest princess had a strong husband and a weak wife. This couple was probably the exact opposite. It was just unknown to what extent. The fifth prince consort did not disappoint Princess Minxiang. He smiled gently at Princess Minxiang and looked at noble consort Su. Noble consort, it's like this. Actually, 2 months ago, the princess was pregnant, but she did not realize it at that time. The princess accidentally slipped and the child was gone. The princess was very sad about this and blamed herself, so she did not dare to tell noble consort. Speaking of which, this is also my fault. I did not take good care of the princess. Thus, I was very timid and did not dare to ask for forgiveness from noble consort. As he spoke, he revealed a sad and guilty expression. When Princess Minxiang heard this, she nodded vigorously and also became sad. It really looked like that. However, her acting skills were not up to standard. In some people's eyes, it was simply clumsy. With noble consort Su's thoughts, she naturally understood that there was probably another problem. Taking into account the current situation, she did not continue to ask. She even comforted her with a few words. She was still young and had to take care of her body. She would definitely have a child. She had to be more careful in the future. It was said that the Empress had already woken up. Although she was still dizzy and did not know what had happened, the illness this time came too suddenly and too quickly. She probably would not recover so quickly. Moreover, it would be difficult for her to even get out of bed in a short period of time. Fortunately, there was no danger to her life. She just needed to recuperate well, and it would not affect her lifespan. However, it was best not to overwork her mind, especially during the period of recuperation. It was best not to worry about anything. Knowing this situation, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. For noble consort Su and the others, this situation could be said to be quite advantageous. As long as the Empress was alive, they did not have to worry about Lu Chengdi creating another balance. Moreover, she was lying in bed and could not do anything. Noble consort Su and the others would have fewer restrictions. However, the reason for her illness was probably still because of Prince Kong. Everyone knew the unfinished words. Lu Chengdi was so angry that he kicked him twice and then punished him to kneel. This time, Prince Kong was very obedient. He lowered his head and did not say a word. After making sure that the Empress would get better, Lu Chengdi left the Empress's palace and went back to do his business. From this point of view, it seemed that he was not too bad. But who knew if Lu Chengdi was also putting on an act? The Empress's current situation was really not suitable to be disturbed. So Lu Chengdi sent all the people in the palace back. Noble consort, Su wanted them to stay in the palace for dinner. In fact, the most important thing was to ask Li Hongyuan's opinion. She did not need to ask about the others at all. She just needed to say a word. Li Hongyuan nodded and agreed. Noble consort, Su immediately beamed with joy. Seeing her reaction, Jingwan could not help but silently complain in her heart. Noble consort Su, have you ever thought about the feelings of your own children? Sure enough, you are the same as His Majesty. You are used to being abused by this son. Then after His Majesty, you have a tendency to be abused? Whether you admit it or not, this was the ability of the King of Hell. No one else could learn it. It was just a meal. Even if Li Hongyuan was not there, Jingwan could eat. With him there, she did not have to worry about anything. She did not have to be careful about what she said to guard against traps. In his mansion, Li Hongyuan took care of Jingwan in some ways. It had become a habit, so he restrained himself. Sometimes, his words and deeds were still very obvious, especially when compared with the other two couples. Therefore, what Jingwan did not know was that she had unintentionally fed some people a lot of dog food. Without comparison, there would be no harm. If the comparison was too obvious, the harm would be too great. In the past, outsiders rarely saw the way they got along with each other. Needless to say, Princess Rue and Prince Rue had always treated each other with respect. She tried her best to be Prince Rue's wife. Prince Rue took care of her and treated her warmly. That was simply a joke. Although Princess Minxiang had control over her prince consort and did not have any concubines by her side, she only had hatred in her heart. Princess Minxiang never knew that her brother had such a side to him. How could she not be envious and jealous of Jingwan? Noble consort Su was also very frustrated, especially when she saw Jingwan's indifferent expression. It was obvious that she was used to it. Noble consort Su was even more unhappy. But she had to take care of her son, take care of her son, take care of her son. In the end, he understood Li Hongyuan's character. He wasn't like Patriarch Pei, who thought that Li Hongyuan was putting on an act. This man who always did things his own way and disdained to put on an act. Why would he purposely put on an act for others to see? Therefore, this was something that couldn't be any more real. Who would have thought that Jin Qinhuang, who was dissolute and fond of beauty, who would pamper the most beautiful woman for 7 days, would be so considerate and considerate towards his Wang Fei, who was not considered to be absolutely beautiful. After finishing lunch and digesting the food, noble consort Su let Li Hongyuan take Jingwan to the side hall where he used to live. That was the place where Li Hongyuan lived before he was 7 years old. Noble consort Su had kept it until now. Of course, Prince Rue also kept it, but Prince Rue declined. He still had things to do, and let Princess Rue take the 2 children to rest. As for Princess Minxiang, there was no need to talk about it. Because this girl, before she got married, she had always been in Jade Essence Palace. At this time, she did not think of herself as a married daughter. Jingwan entered the side hall and saw the layout inside. There was not a single thing that was not meticulous. Moreover, there were no sharp things, and the corners were also carefully handled. Noble consort Nyanyang is really good to Wang Yi. Jingwan sighed with emotion, but this emotion was not pure. A complicated look flashed through Li Hongyuan's eyes. This place was the place where he lived before he was 7 years old, and the time he came back was when he was 10 years old. This meant that the real time that he parted with this place added together was close to 50 years. Originally, he should not have any impression of this place, but after walking in, some things still faintly appeared in his memory. It could be seen that this memory was very profound to him, but Su sure destroyed it. In the previous life, it wasn't that Li Hongyuan didn't have resentment, but as time passed, it faded. But now, he had the only person he cared about by his side. Li Hongyuan reached out and pulled Jingwan's hand. Jingwan was puzzled at first, but then she smiled. Is Wang Yi hiding any little secrets here? Even if there is, after so many years, I would have long forgotten. Can I look for it? Jingwan asked expectantly. With regards to her husband's childhood matters, Jingwan was looking forward to it. Li Honyuan chuckled, sure. Then, Jingwan happily went on a treasure hunt. This side chamber was large enough that Jingwan spent almost the entire lunch break searching for treasures. Needless to say, she really did find some things. Among them, there was a small box that was locked. It looked like it hadn't been opened for many years. Therefore, even if this box was known to exist, noble consort Su and the palace maids who cleaned this bedchamber probably didn't know what was inside. Li Honyuan carefully thought about it. According to his vague memory, he searched several places and finally found the key. I didn't know that a Yuan was so good at hiding things. Jingwan opened the box, and the things inside were completely revealed. They were all small things, and most of them were toys. However, it was obvious that in the eyes of a child, these things were treasures. Li Honyuan basically didn't remember the origins of these things, but among them, there was a red fortune bag that he took out. What's wrong? Do you have an impression of this thing? Li Honyuan shook his head. He had already felt that there was something inside. When he opened it, it was a piece of jade. However, the moment he saw it, Li Hongyuan's expression became abnormal. It was a very special piece of jade. It was crystal clear and slightly yellow in color, but there were scattered blood-red patterns that looked like cracks. It didn't look like they were blended, but rather the cracks were completely embedded in it. However, the surface was incomparably smooth. According to the current technology, such a thing couldn't be artificially created. Jingwan felt that it was strange, but it wasn't unbelievable. After all, there are all kinds of strange things in the world. It looks quite beautiful, Yuan. What's wrong? Is there something wrong? Li Honyuan restrained the emotions on his face. It's nothing. I just remembered that this was left behind by the imperial consort. It's the only thing she left behind that is in my hands. If that was the case, Li Honyuan naturally wouldn't do anything. However, before he died in his previous life, this piece of jade was with him. It shouldn't have been strange. However, after he moved out from here at the age of 7, other than occasionally coming in the first year, he never came in again. In his previous life, after he ascended the throne, he sent the palace servants to clean up this place. He didn't touch it at all. As for whether this box was in his hands or not, he forgot. However, he was 100% sure that this jade wasn't with him. A few years before he died, this jade inexplicably appeared by his side. He even carried it with him from time to time. However, now that he thought about it, he couldn't remember how this jade appeared. He cared about it so much that it never left his body. There was no reason for him to forget its origin. The more he thought about it, the more suspicious it became. It was as if it appeared out of thin air, and he didn't suspect it at all. At that time, he seemed to have completely forgotten that this was something left behind by his biological mother. Now, the moment he saw it, he clearly knew its origin. There was something wrong with this jade. Li Honyuan held the jade in his hand and decided to carry it with him in the future. As for what to do with it, he didn't think about it at all. After all, if it could appear by his side out of nowhere once, there might be a second time. In that case, it was better to just keep it. Of course, he wouldn't let Jingwan touch something he didn't understand. Jingwan naturally wouldn't touch the only thing left behind by the imperial noble consort. Since it's a treasure, why didn't you take it with you when you moved out? Jingwan said as she locked up the box again. At this point, she definitely wouldn't take it with her. It would be best if it was returned to somewhere far away. As for what would happen in the end, there was no need to fuss over it. I forgot. Maybe I hid it when I was younger. I didn't think of it when I moved out. Jingwan nodded. Maybe. Children are naturally forgetful. Fortunately, the imperial noble consort always kept it. Otherwise, I don't know where it would be. Li Honyuan answered absent-mindedly. From time to time, he would look at the jade in his hand. Tonight, he naturally wasn't angry. Seeing the only thing left behind by his mother, it was normal for him to be a little strange. After Li Honyuan examined it a few times, he still found some differences. He remembered that in his previous life, the red lines inside were alive. That kind of feeling was really flowing. Now, the water inside still wasn't rigid, but it was a characteristic that a normal good jade should have. The abnormality seemed to be from his previous life. When it was about time, the two left the side hall hand in hand. Li Hongyuan didn't want to stay in the Jade Essence Palace, so he said goodbye. Imperial noble consort Su's complexion was a little bad. He didn't know if it was because of this, but she didn't urge him to stay. Afterwards, Jingwan found out that Princess Minxiang had already left the palace an hour ago. It seemed that there was an 80 to 90% chance that the mother and daughter had a conflict. After leaving the Jade Essence Palace, Jingwan suddenly remembered that perhaps she should go see Qin Shufei. When she was in the Empress Palace, she didn't seem to notice the other's existence. Thus, she mentioned it to Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan nodded. Thus, they went to the Sweet Dew Palace. Qin Shufei still maintained an attitude of not being close or distant. Her smile was gentle. I didn't think that the two of you would come to Ben Gong's place. To be honest, with Qin Shufei's attitude, if a certain person hadn't told her, she wouldn't have suspected that this Qin Shufei was in cahoots with a certain person. Moreover, how did she make the Empress of the Imperial Palace fall ill just like that? She couldn't be too amazing. The last time I entered the palace, I should have paid my respects to Imperial Noble Consort Shu. However, because of a small accident, I left the palace first. Thinking that there's nothing to do now, I came to see Imperial Noble. I hope Imperial Noble doesn't blame me. Qin Shufei laughed. You're quite honest. Then, they chatted a bit more. Li Hongyuan just drank tea on the side, looking relaxed and at ease. However, other than the first greeting, he didn't say a word. No matter how one looked at it, it was a bit. All right, Ben Gong won't keep you. If you wait any longer, Old Sixth will have a temper. Qin Shufei said slightly teasingly. Jingwan was about to say something when Lucheng Emperor's chamberlain outside came to deliver the imperial edict. Left with no choice, Li Hongyuan and Jingwan received the imperial edict together. The so-called imperial edict was only a verbal order, but the thing that came with it, Qin Shufei received the phoenix seal with both hands and sighed helplessly. The tree wants to be still, but the wind won't stop. That's right, Gui de Shu and Xian were the 4 imperial concubines, with Gui Fei as the head. Lucheng Emperor only had 2 imperial concubines in his harem. The Empress had a phoenix body, so even if the palace affairs weren't handed over to the people around the Empress, the phoenix seal should have been handed over to Gui Fei. She would take care of official business, and then Shu Fei would assist her. But now, the Gui Fei was bypassed, and the phoenix seal fell into Shu Fei's hands. In the end, it was probably for the sake of balance. She could almost imagine that in the future, Kong Wang Qin's power would shrink, and the Gong Wang Qin's power would expand. The Sweet Dew Palace, which had always been peaceful, would also become lively. And some things, even if Qin Shufei didn't want to get involved, they would take the initiative to involve her. There would always be people who wouldn't let her off easily, especially the Gong Wang Qin, who knows how much he would jump up and down. If Qin Shufei really was a person who liked the present life, then the following days would really make her uncomfortable. Shufei Nyang. Jingwan felt a little guilty, because she was the culprit. If it weren't for her, her husband wouldn't have let the Empress fall ill, and if the Empress didn't fall ill, Shufei wouldn't have to take on such a hot potato and could still live a comfortable life. Qin Shufei saw Jingwan's worry, and her heart warmed. She really was a good child. Chuckling, it's okay, although I don't like it, I can still cope. I'm afraid someone will come here soon, you should leave the palace. They couldn't help if they stayed, on the contrary, they might even cause trouble, so it was best to obediently leave the palace. Leaving the palace and boarding the Wang Mansion's carriage, Jingwan sighed. The following days won't be peaceful. When did Wan ever feel peaceful? That's right, this inheritance war, as long as it doesn't end, there will be no peace. Even if it ends, it may be chaotic for a while. It won't affect Wan. What he did was to hold up the sky for Jingwan, but if he made her worry and tired, what was the point of living? I know. Jingwan lazily lay on Li Hongyuan's lap. By the way, a Yuan, Princess Min Xiang, and her husband don't seem to be on good terms? It's nothing more than Min Xiang being unruly and domineering. I don't know the specifics, but if you're interested, you can ask an E. In Jingwan's view, an E was the head of the Secret Service under the living Hell King. He not only had to do the work on the surface, but also had to do things in the dark. He even had to manage all kinds of gossip, which was really difficult for him. A Yuan should give him more monthly allowance. Jingwan teased. Isn't this under Wan's management? Besides, it's just a summary of some information. How hard can it be? Jingwan was silent for a moment. It seemed that they didn't need to care about food and clothing. All of it went through the Wang Mansion's public account. And every month there was at least 1,000 taels. If they went out on missions, there were additional subsidies. For ordinary high-ranking officials as guards, it seemed that having 10 taels a month was not bad. Even if it was a Wang Mansion, especially one with power and influence, 100 taels a month was already very good. Thinking about it this way, Jinqin Wang Mansion was simply the highest of high salaries, and it seemed that they weren't treated badly. Jingwan's heart was at ease. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/66541118 HTML chapter error. Please click here to report. No registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version, reading website, Bicken.com. Chapter 383. The guards of honor stopped. Juzi, the young master of General He's family, is blocking the road. When Jingwan heard that, she snorted and looked at Li Hongyuan with ridicule. The young master of the He family truly loves a Yuan deeply. After all, other than him, there shouldn't be anyone else who would dare to block the carriage of the King of Hell. Right? Is a Yuan not prepared to express anything? Li Hongyuan lazily glanced at Jingwan. Sorry, Ben Wang only wants to fight with his own Wang Fei. I don't have any interest in fighting with outsiders. Jingwan made an embarrassed face. What was it? Such a manly matter. How could he turn it into such a perverted thing? After the embarrassment was over, Jingwan coldly laughed. Wang Yi can slowly fight by yourself. Ben Wang Fei has no interest in accompanying you. It doesn't matter if you fight on the bed or off the bed. Our Jin Qin Wang will definitely win. She reached out and lightly patted his face. Ben Wang Fei is quite optimistic about you. Work hard, Wang Yi. Perverted was perverted. Violent was violent. Who was afraid of who? I will definitely win under the bed. As to whether I can win on the bed, only Wang Fei will know. Li Hongyuan leaned close to Jingwan's ear and lowered his voice. He stuck out his tongue and licked Jingwan's earlobe. Wan, tell me, does this husband seem to have lost her one? He deliberately pulled out a seductive ending note. Jingwan couldn't help but tremble. She subconsciously slapped him, speak properly, so easily breaking the rules. Li Hongyuan directly laughed out loud. Don't talk about slapping him away. His entire person hung onto Jingwan's body. Although Jingwan's physical fitness was much stronger than the majority of women, in Li Hongyuan's hands, she was still like a little chick. The people outside didn't receive any instructions from their masters for a long time and also didn't express anything. They just looked down and didn't say anything. Now, as long as the two masters were together in the carriage, they would habitually weaken their 5 senses, especially their hearing. They could always find a way to divert their attention, because the situation in the carriage was usually poisonous. It was a group of young and vigorous men. Although the situation was special and their desires were lower than ordinary people, it didn't mean that they didn't have it. From time to time, they would be stimulated. Even a saint would get angry, so it was best to think of a way to isolate this situation. He Jihai came alone today and didn't ride a horse. Although he blocked the road, he didn't barge in. He was actually a little nervous. He was afraid that Jin Qinhuang would refuse. After all, if Qinhuang refused, he wouldn't dare to force. It wasn't because he was afraid of being beaten again, but because it would bring trouble to his family. Return to the Fu. Li Honyuan opened his mouth. Because he had long prepared to properly train He Zhihai. He wanted to turn him into a valiant general who could lead the army. This fight was definitely going to happen. Most likely, it would be more than once. He had to thoroughly beat this brat until he became obedient. Only then, it would be easier to deal with him in the future. It was just that now wasn't the time. He had to let He Zhihai block the door again and again. When he was finally annoyed to the point that he couldn't stand, then he would make a move. Only then would he be able to block the conspiracy theories in some people's minds. Only then could his plan proceed smoothly. The guards of honor started to move forward again, ignoring little gangster, he who was standing in the middle. Little gangster, he couldn't act like a tyrant anymore, so he could only obediently make way for them. Then he looked at the guards of honor, leaving with a pitiful expression on his face. If someone didn't know what was going on, they would think that he was looking at a heartless person. Until the procession of honor disappeared from his sight, little bully he dejectedly left, completely unable to raise his spirit. When he returned home, his family members saw his appearance and were fiercely shocked. Even if this brat's leg was broken, he could still jump up and down. All day long, he didn't have a single moment of rest. His energy was so good that it gave people a headache. To be honest, they really hadn't seen him like this before. Although He Zhihai was a bully, the kind that gave the family an abnormal headache. When it was time to scold, he would scold, and when it was time to beat, he would beat. He absolutely wouldn't be lenient. However, towards this youngest child, he was still abnormally fond of him. At this time, he naturally expressed his concern, fearing that he would really encounter something. He Zhihai scowled miserably. Jin Qinhuang ignored me. Those who didn't know would think that he was abandoned by Jin Qinhuang and had an expression of being struck by lightning. And those who knew would also have an expression of being struck by lightning. This evil creature really foolishly went to block the door. The scene froze for a few breaths. Then, one by one, they flicked their sleeves and left. This kind of thing, it would be strange if Jin Qinhuang paid attention to you. Hey, you guys don't go Listen to me Jin Qinhuang is too excessive. The procession of honor has stopped. I thought that he would have a good fight with me. Last time, we clearly agreed. How could he go back on his words? He Zhihai chased that, catching people to complain. He was the youngest among the masters of the He family. When they were impatient, they all sent him a single word: scram. Go to the side that was cool and stay there. When they ignored him, little Tyrant, he went to look for the family members he brought back. These people didn't dare to tell him to scram. So if they hid, they would be met with little Tyrant he's merciless punches. After that, they could only listen to little Tyrant he's repeated complaints. They had only seen this little Tyrant as lively as a dragon and lively as a tiger. All day long, he was full of vigor and might. Now, he had a melancholy expression. To be honest, it could no longer be described as being struck by lightning. General, save me. Our family's little Gongzi has been replaced by someone. Hurry and find the real little Gongzi. Even if that little Tyrant was a bit overbearing, it was still much better than this. Now this one was really too terrifying. After General, he returned to the Fu. He heard this terrifying news. He almost pulled all of his beard off. He sent someone to call that evil creature over. Then he saw that there wasn't the slightest bit of vitality. His listless youngest son weakly called out, "Dad," instead of the energetic old man. "What are you looking for me for?" In that instant, he was greatly shocked. Then he became angry, blocking the way in front of Jin Qinhuang's procession of honor. "You are really becoming more and more lawless. Laozi said so much to you. Was it all in vain?" "Dad, Jin Qinhuang is ignoring me." "How can he ignore me?" Then, as if he thought of something, His eyes suddenly became bright. "Dad, why don't you go directly to the emperor and ask for an imperial edict? If there is an imperial edict, Jin Qinhuang, you will definitely not refuse, right?" The more he thought about it, the more he felt that this idea was really too good. General He Jinwei was so angry that he almost fell backwards. This was completely not listening to his words and even fantasizing about asking for an imperial edict to fight. He knew that this evil creature's mind was only filled with fighting and fighting all day long, but he didn't think that it would be so outrageous to this extent. Those who knew would only silently look at you. This idiot. Those who didn't know would think that you were taking the opportunity to secretly communicate with Jin Qinhuang Yi in an attempt to make a big conspiracy. Jin Qinhuang Yi not paying attention to you is right and also light. If he gave an order, the guards by his side could completely cripple you, or even kill you. The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. So he took out the horsewhip that basically never left his side and lashed it at little Tyrant He. Little Tyrant He originally had a face full of hope, but what could he do? What he waited for was Laozi's whip. Thus he began to jump up and down to dodge. "Old man, why are you hitting me again? You're not allowed to hit anymore. If you hit again, Xiao Yi will fight back." Again? Xiao Yi will really fight back, ah. However, he only heard all kinds of shouts and didn't really dare to fight back. When the people outside heard this, they breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, it was normal. At He Jinwei's age, in the end, he couldn't compare to He Zhihai's physical strength. In the end, he stopped panting. "You're not allowed to go find Jin Qinhuang Yi again. Do you hear me? If you dare to go again, do you believe that Laozi will immediately send you back to the northeast border city? If I send him away, Xiao Yi will come back by himself?" He Zhihai grimaced in pain. After all, the injuries on his body were real. He muttered in a low voice. If it was before he saw Li Hongyuan's martial prowess, He Zhihai would rather stay in the border city. Now, he hadn't even fought once and he wanted to let him go? No way. He Jinwei was so angry that he almost vomited blood. "I already said that Jin Qinhuang Yi is not someone who is easy to provoke. He can let you go once, but there might not be a second time. You delivered yourself to his doorstep. Even if you die, no one can ask for justice from you. At most, I just blocked the carriage and didn't do anything else. Would Jin Qinhuang Yi be so unreasonable as to directly take my life?" He Zhihai muttered with a bit of grievance. General, he was so angry that he laughed. "Reasonable? These 3 words can actually come out of your mouth?" Little Tyrant, he was speechless. Fine, he admitted that when they were in the border city, the most unreasonable person was him. "Dad, in my opinion, Jin Qinhuang Yi is not as notorious as you say. He is such a powerful person. If he doesn't see eye to eye, he will directly beat them up and lose half his life. Who would dare to find trouble with him? He is not a 3-year-old child. He can't always find someone to be unhappy with. Therefore, the living king of hell and whatnot is definitely a false rumor. As a soldier, we should be upright and reasonable, seek truth from facts. Don't be like those civil officials who only know how to scheme and quarrel with words all day long. These words were taught by you, but now you are so prejudiced against Jin Qinhuang Yi. He Jinwei probably didn't think that this evil spawn would actually talk reason with him one day and even use his words to block him, and that won't find someone to be unhappy with. Didn't you, this evil spawn, specialize in doing this kind of thing? Don't you feel embarrassed to say such words again and again? General, he only felt that his head was big, but to be honest, he really couldn't do anything about this evil spawn. This evil spawn thought that Jin Qinhuang Yi was a good person. Then, no matter what, you couldn't change his way of thinking. Perhaps in some people's eyes, appearance was justice. But in He Zhihai's mind, it was definitely martial arts was justice. In any case, you are not allowed to go find Jin Qinhuang Yi again. Otherwise, Laozi will lock you in an iron cage. An iron cage that could lock up a tiger was probably the only thing that could lock up He Zhihai's mind. The iron bars were too thin and had to be specially made. He Zhihai's eyes turned, but he didn't continue to argue with his old man. He Jinwei was 100% sure that this evil spawn definitely hadn't given up on the idea. He didn't know what would happen next. Usually he was a boorish man, but that bit of intelligence was all used to play mind games with them. Who in the He family wasn't upright and strict with themselves? How could there be such an anomaly? If that face didn't look so similar to his own, he would suspect that his loyal wife had put a green hat on his head. Well, in fact, it was He Furin who suspected that He Jianwei had brought back an outside wife to swap her son. Therefore, Furin, he also didn't believe that she had given birth to such a son. Of course, this was just a joke. However, when Furin he beat her son, she was more ruthless than General He. If other people were beaten by their father, they could still find their mother for protection. But for He Zhihai, if he dared to find his mother, it would definitely be a male and female double fight. General He thought that in order to not make things worse, it would be best to report to Lu Qingdi. Originally, the He family was going to hold a banquet for 2 days, and the invitation had been sent out. However, they didn't expect that the Empress was seriously ill. Although it wasn't like she had passed away, they still had to give her some face. Therefore, the banquet was postponed. Because of this, little gangster, he went out to play. Then, the next day, the servant girl who served He Zhihai found that the door of her young master's room couldn't be opened. Little gangster, he might have all kinds of bad habits, but he didn't like to laze in bed. It was already past the time, and it was too strange that he couldn't be seen. Although this servant girl was brought back from the border town and wasn't as delicate as the servant girls of ordinary families, she didn't dare to kick the young master's door. Therefore, she hurriedly ran out to report. He Jianwei and his Furin came hand in hand. Both of them were dressed in martial attire. In a general family, this morning exercise was an essential homework. The general's Furin first knocked on the door, but there wasn't the slightest movement. Then her long, shapely eyebrows rose, and she lifted her foot to kick the door open. That action was quite nimble and destructive. It could be seen that she often did this kind of thing. When everyone entered the room, the result was that the bed was neat and tidy. There wasn't a single shadow, and it was ice cold. This person hadn't been on the bed for quite some time. The door was closed from the inside, so he could only go out through the window. It wasn't that little gangster, he hadn't done this kind of thing before. After checking, sure enough, there was a window that looked tightly closed, but in reality, it wasn't locked. Then, they found out that little gangster, his private stash of money was gone. Thus, how could they not know what was going on? The general's Furin fiercely glared at General He. Find that evil creature, and then settle the account with you. Then she directly went out of the room. Someone come. Send a few people to guard the vicinity of Jin Qinhuang Fu. If you see He Zhihai, that disgraceful thing, directly tie him up. If he dares to resist, as long as he's still alive, beat him until he's crippled. Behind him, General, he rubbed his nose. That evil creature running away from home, most likely it was because he said that he wanted to lock him up in an iron cage. Who knew that this evil creature, in order to achieve his goal, would directly play this trick? Being angered by his Furin, he felt that he was very innocent. Okay? Only beating him until he's crippled. Wasn't it a bit too ruthless? The silver on He Zhihai's body wasn't much, but it wasn't little either. It was enough for him to mingle around outside for a period of time. Regardless of whether he could exchange blows with Jin Qinhuang during this period of time, even if he didn't have the chance, he still had to create an opportunity. If he used up all the money on him and still didn't achieve his goal, then he would talk about it when the time came. After returning, he would be even more miserable. For the time being, he shouldn't think about it. In any case, every time he thought about how ruthless his Laonyang was, he couldn't help but grit his teeth. He knew that if he ran away from home, he would definitely be caught by his papa and mama. This kind of game where you chase and I hide, he had been playing since he was a few years old. Moreover, it was as if he was born with this skill, playing it very smoothly. Not long after, the land around Jin Qinhuang Fu had already been trampled by him. So when he saw his Laoj personally leading people to catch him, The little gangster squatting on the wall snorted disdainfully and continued to gnaw on the steamed bun in his hand. Little gangster, he was very confident that unless he was surrounded by enough people in a relatively wide area, he wouldn't be easily caught. In some aspects, little gangster, he was absolutely blessed by the heavens. He could master martial arts with just a little bit, and he also had a valiant physique and inexhaustible energy. His physical strength was also absolutely valiant. It wasn't enough to describe him as an animal. Other people would have times when they were tired on the battlefield, but on the battlefield, it was as if he was playing. In short, when he participated in the war at the northeast border, not once did he show any signs of fatigue. When other people were gasping for breath and their hands were shaking, he was as excited as if he had just finished warming up. Therefore, even if he messed around, those high-ranking officers really didn't hate him. Where was the limit of little gangster? His physical strength. His family didn't know, the Northeast Army didn't know, and even he himself didn't know. After all, under normal circumstances, the limit couldn't be called the limit. That kind of oppression, or even struggling on the line between life and death, was the real limit. If there was anyone in the world who knew, it would probably be Li Hongyuan. In his previous life, it was this winter when the He family was exterminated. He fought alone for 7 whole days. Except for the time when he was looking for food, he was either chasing the enemy or killing them. He didn't sleep at all. In the end, when he was finally found, he couldn't be called a human anymore. However, the aftereffects were also very serious. As for how long this peak state could last, Li Hongyuan later saw it with his own eyes. 3 to 4 days was nothing difficult. He really couldn't be called a human anymore. Although Li Hongyuan could still beat him now, he was very self-aware. First, it was the result of his deliberate training over the years. His previous life was far from what it was now. Second, there was no spiritual pressure in He Hongyuan's sea of consciousness, so it was difficult for him to explode. He was only 16 years old now. After a few more years, when he fully matured, the power that he could only explode now could be used. At that time, he would only need to use his arms and fingers. Li Hongyuan was definitely not his opponent. This was He Hai's own advantage. He occupied a high position, which other people couldn't achieve no matter how much they trained. Although He Hai was very good at hiding from his own family, he was still not good at hiding from Yi's people. After all, the He family's people were soldiers. How could they be compared with the shadow guards in this respect? Therefore, when He Hai stepped on the ground, the shadow guards of the prince's mansion found out and reported to an Yi immediately. Li Hongyuan naturally knew. As long as he doesn't climb over the walls of Jin Wangfu, there's no need to care about him. It wasn't that the Wangfu's people didn't find He Hai's unexpected indulgence strange, but they didn't ask much. In the past, didn't they indulge Ruan Fangfei? At that time, they had a purpose. Now, they definitely had one. These people in Jin Wangfu always had a mysterious trust in their own master. The matter of Li Hongyuan wanting to cultivate He Hai, Jingwan knew about it. Jingwan often used this matter to tease him. In the end, He Hai was worried that he was too reckless and would implicate his family. Therefore, he only dared to wander around outside the Wangfu. However, in order to fish, Li Hongyuan's frequency of going out was relatively high. Of course, every time he went out, there was a legitimate reason, so no one would suspect anything. This time, it happened once, twice, thrice. Occasionally, when He Hai was ignored by Li Hongyuan, his elder brother would bring people out to catch him. However, he would always slip away. This matter naturally became known by more and more people. It was simply another matter that people took delight in talking about. Jin Wangfu's style in the past was something that everyone knew. However, in the past 1 or 2 years, he had restrained himself a lot. Only now did they discover this point. However, the living king of hell was still the living king of hell. He wouldn't stop being the king of hell just because he hadn't made a move for a period of time. It was also because that he family's young master didn't do anything that he was ignored. If he was annoyed again and again, it was estimated that he would make a move to clean him up. Many people were also guessing how long the He family's young master could last. However, no one dared to be certain. Thinking back, when Jin Wangfei and Jin Wangfu were engaged, there were people who opened a booklet to see how long Jin Wangfei could live. Jin Wangfei didn't have anything happen to her and properly married into the Wangfu. 10 li of red dowry, hundreds of people obstructing the marriage. It was very lively. After that, there were people who opened a booklet to see how long Jin Wangfei could live under Jin Wangfu. The result was similarly unexpected. So now, they really didn't dare to say anything with certainty. However, these didn't matter. It was enough that there was a show to watch. In fact, it wasn't only He Zhihai who was ignored by Li Hongyuan. There was another person, and that was Li Hongming. In the past, when they met, Li Hongyuan would at least give a greeting. Now he completely ignored everyone he saw and treated the other brothers as normal. At this time, Li Hongming also knew that the previous matter wasn't over yet. Even if Li Hongyuan and Mu Fei reconciled, it didn't mean that he would be as good as before. If he was completely ignored by Li Hongyuan, it might not be a bad thing. However, he had to ensure that he would never provoke him in the future. Otherwise, at that time, he would most likely kill him. Even if he deliberately avoided him, he might still provoke him. After all, when he cleaned him up in the past, many times it was inexplicable. In the past, because of noble consort Su, Li Hongyuan was actually quite merciful to him. If he exerted a bit of pressure on him, then the other brothers would have to suffer a bit of pressure. In this regard, Li Hongyuan could be said to be a great help to him. If Li Hongyuan exerted a bit of pressure on him in the future, he could imagine how dejected he would be. Thinking of this, Li Hongming's expression became particularly gloomy. Noble consort Su originally didn't know about this matter, but Li Hongming intentionally or unintentionally let her know. As a result, noble consort Su's spirit began to fade after a few days. She called Li Hongming over and directly asked him, "Your younger brother helped you, but you didn't go to him to thank him?" Li Hongming smiled bitterly. Mu Fei, this son has always wanted to, but I just haven't found the right opportunity. With this delay, sixth brother is giving me less and less of a chance. Noble consort Su directly smashed a cup at him. Ben Gong is very clear about your thoughts. Don't expect Ben Gong to help you in this matter. Either you solve it yourself, or, if he does anything to you in the future, you will have to bear it yourself. Yuan had always been the kind of person who would take revenge on anyone who had a grudge against him. He would never let anything go past the night. This time, he was so angry because of her. He didn't want to argue with his mother, so naturally, he transferred all his anger to his second son. However, this bastard didn't take it seriously. Now that he finally realized that something was wrong, he came looking for her. Li Hongming could only leave Jade Essence Palace with a sullen face. Noble consort, Su rubbed her temples. Everyone says that Lao Lu is a vile creature. This Lao and Min Xiang are also vile creatures. None of them are easy to worry about. His trusted palace maid beside him hurriedly comforted him while gently massaging him. Noble consort Su's method didn't work, so Li Hongming could only go find Li Hongyuan. What did it mean to kiss someone's cold but with warm face? He thoroughly understood what it meant. When Prince Rui came to Jin Qinhuangfu, he was shut out of the gate. This matter became a joke between brothers the next day. Li Hongming was used to putting on an act. At this time, his face couldn't keep it straight. It wasn't easy to meet Jin Qinhuang, so he diligently appeared at the morning court. After the morning court ended, Li Hongming prepared to throw away his face in front of so many people. He didn't expect to achieve his goal, but to let the court officials see his sincerity. In the future, when Li Hongyuan made a move against him, he could say a few good words for him in front of Fu Huang. However, man proposes, God disposes. He was about to step forward when He Jinwei beat him to it. Greetings to Wang Ye. First of all, his attitude was quite sincere. Is something the matter? Li Hongyuan faintly glanced at him. Wang Ye, regarding the matter of my son obstructing Wanya many times recently. This official apologizes to Wanya and asks for Wanya's forgiveness. Ben Wang won't go as far as to bicker with a young boy. However, if it happens too many times, it will be annoying. General, he still needs to control it. If there's a next time, Ben Wang may not let him leave in one piece. Li Hongyuan's tone was still indifferent. He Jinwei smiled bitterly. Wangya, you don't know. My son is obsessed with martial arts. Towards people with strong martial art skills, he must find someone to spar with. Because of this, I often reprimanded him, but it was completely useless. These days, he was afraid that this official would lock him up, so he simply took the money and went out without returning home. If it was a normal situation, I can take my son home, but my son is used to hiding in the border town and is slippery. It really gives me a headache. What does it have to do with Ben Wang? Li Hongyuan's face already showed some impatience. He Jinwei resisted the action of wiping his sweat. Facing Jin Qinwang, this pressure was really quite big. However, if he didn't satisfy that evil creature's wish, this matter would never end. This official has a presumptuous request. Can this official ask for Wanya to condescend? Let that evil creature know that there is always someone better. Perhaps it will stop. Li Hongyuan sneered. Last time, your son offended Ben Wang's Wang Fei. Ben Wang let him learn a lesson and didn't bicker with him. Now that you want Ben Wang to make a move, aren't you afraid that Ben Wang will cripple him? He Jinwei didn't think that Li Hongyuan was joking at all. He forced a smile. If it's really like this, then it's his fate. Lao Lu, since it's like this, you might as well help Minister He this once. It's also a good opportunity to let Jin see how far your martial arts have progressed. When you left the palace at the age of 16, Zhen hasn't seen your martial art skills. Among you brothers, your martial art skills are the best, and your innate talent is the best. Lu Qingdi, who had originally left from Dan Emperor's side, appeared outside the main hall at some unknown time. He was quite emotional. Many thanks for Emperor's help. He Jinwei was extremely grateful. Sure enough, this report from before was correct. Li Hongyuan frowned, appearing a little unwilling. Fu Huang, Your Honor is not willing to fulfill such a small wish? Lu Qingdi pretended to be sad. I can, accepts the order. Li Hongyuan responded, but his face was still cold. Fu Huang is still full of energy when shouting at people. People like it more, like this. He showed obvious disdain. Lu Qingdi's face darkened. Disgraceful thing. How can you speak to Laozi like that? Li Hongyuan's expression eased, almost writing sure enough, it should be like this, pleasing to the eye. Lu Qingdi's nose almost crooked from anger. On the side, He Jinwei secretly glanced at Lu Qingdi. His mind was balanced. That evil spawn of his would also talk back, but he wouldn't dare to contradict him and wouldn't specifically anger him. But Jin Qinwang was different. Looking at the situation and the surrounding courtiers, they were completely unconcerned. Then, looking at the emperor, after a few breaths of time, he adjusted his mood. It looked like he was used to it. Perhaps this situation was still light. That evil spawn of his was really far from it. If Lu Qingdi wanted to watch, this could only be done in the palace. There was no need for instructions. Someone had already taken the initiative to pass down the message. As for where to find little bully, he who didn't return home, just look at the places he appeared in these few days. In any case, he was near Jin Qinwang Fu. Otherwise, if they took Jin Qinwang's honor guard out for a walk, he would definitely appear. Yuanara, you are several years older than Minister He's youngest son. Later, when you spar, control yourself a little and don't go too far. No, He Jinwei hurriedly said, Your Majesty, you don't know. Once my son fights with others, he gets excited easily. Especially when he meets his match, he doesn't know how to restrain himself. Moreover, that kid always doesn't know what's good for him. Later, when Wangya really shows mercy on him, he will only think that Wangya is looking down on him. Instead, it will arouse his ferocious nature, and he will become more and more reckless. If by any chance he injures Wangya, that evil spawn should be ruthlessly dealt with. Hearing this, Lu Qingdi frowned. Minister, how is your son's martial arts? Originally, he thought that a 16-year-old kid, no matter how powerful he was, would be like that. Now, it seemed that it wasn't the case. He Jinwei's lips quivered, attracting the attention of the courtiers who had stayed behind to watch the battle. After a while, he awkwardly said, replying to your majesty, that evil creature is the #1 in the Northeast Army. This is not a boast made by the soldiers to give him face, but he used his own strength to fight for it. This subject and my eldest son have both been defeated by him. Many people gasped with Lu Qingdi. They all knew how valiant He Jinwei was, and He Jinwei's eldest son was even better. This 16-year-old kid was able to defeat them. Was the He family trying to defy the heavens? After exclaiming in amazement, Lu Qingdi turned to look at He Jinwei. My dear minister, you hit it well. He Jinwei was embarrassed, your majesty. The main thing is that this kid's temperament is too unstable. It's difficult for him to take on such a big responsibility. This minister originally wanted to train him for 2 more years. Lu Qingdi was not an unreasonable person. Although he didn't know much about war, he knew that martial arts alone couldn't lead soldiers. He nodded to express his understanding. My dear minister's worries are reasonable. However, it's a blessing for our Qi Yuan dynasty that the He family can produce another valiant general. Your majesty is too kind. It's my duty to protect the country. Naturally, the emperor liked this kind of official very much. However, when he looked at Li Hongyuan again, he was worried. He was very proud of his son, but his opponent was the best in the Northeast Army, a little lunatic who didn't care about anything when he fought. His son was raised by a noble and was a few years older than that kid, so he didn't have an advantage. Was it too late to stop this fight now? He was the emperor with a golden mouth and jade words, but there were so many people who really believed him. Li Hongyuan didn't seem to notice Lu Qingdi's worry. Even if he did, he would ignore it. After fishing for so long, it was just the beginning of the harvest. How could he stop now? Imperial father. This son will go to Imperial mother's place to change clothes. I will take my leave now. After saying that, he left by himself. Lu Qingdi opened his mouth and swallowed back the words that were about to come out. He Jinwei looked down and didn't see the emperor and father who didn't have any dignity at all. Lu Qingdi didn't care. In any case, it wasn't the first time that he was seen by his officials. Everyone was used to it. After waiting for a moment, your majesty, although my son is muddle-headed, he has always only challenged people who are stronger than him. Although he has always judged based on his own feelings, he has almost never made a mistake. Therefore, in this official's opinion, Jin Wanya's skill is above my son's, so, according to the degree of ruthlessness of the King of Hell, you don't have to worry at all. Lu Qingdi was really relieved, but he was puzzled. Was this son strong to this extent? He leisurely went to the martial arts practice field in the palace. That was the place where the princes practiced martial arts. They already knew who was going to use it. Moreover, the emperor and the court officials had arrived, so they didn't dare to neglect. They prepared the field and carefully checked again and again to make sure that there were no mistakes. As the saying goes, swords have no eyes. Therefore, for this kind of thing, they didn't ask for merit, but to not make a mistake. It should be known that the masters who taught the princes martial arts were always trembling with fear. If they met those mischievous and completely disobedient princes, they would simply put their heads on their waistbands. Not long after Lu Qingdi and the others sat down, Li Hongyuan also arrived. He changed out of his gorgeous Qinhuang robe and put on a black robe. The sleeves were tightened and the waist was tightened. His whole person seemed more upright and straight. His handsome face was matchless. If one ignored his temperament, anyone who saw him would praise him. What a pity, it was really a pity, including Lu Qingdi. At first, he was proud, but then his expression darkened. Even if this child lost his mother, if he wasn't a devil, and Li Hongyuan's other brothers seemed to suddenly realize at this moment that if the Imperial Gui Fei was still here, they probably wouldn't have to fight for anything. They would obediently go to the corner and plant mushrooms. Maybe they could even become rich Wangya. Rejoice, really rejoice. Even so, those who didn't know the truth were still very afraid of him. However, those who knew Li Hongyuan's ability were all twitching their mouths and silently criticizing him. Pity? Rejoice? Haha, I hope you won't cry too miserably in the end. This was the one who hid the deepest, and the one with the most profound cultivation. The others were just drizzling rain. He Zhihai hadn't arrived yet, but he didn't mind waiting for a while. Anyway, after this period of time, the matter in Jiangnan had basically come to a final conclusion. For the time being, there was nothing important at hand. Lu Chengdi had the mentality of stealing half a day's rest. He Jinwei was a little sweaty. No matter what, it was a sin to let the emperor wait for a nobody. Fortunately, the waiting time was much shorter than expected. He Zhihai excitedly entered the martial arts practice field and stared at Li Hongyuan with shining eyes. His expression was quite excited. It seemed that there was only one person left in the world. The emperor and the ministers with great power all went to hell. He Zhenwei had a feeling that he couldn't bear to look directly. Did this evil creature have to be so shameful? That was a man. Even if he was incomparably handsome, he was still a man. Your eyes were simply like a beautiful woman in thin clothes in front of you. You want to take off her clothes at any time. Quickly, stop. Her father is still on the side and can decide your life and death at any time. Beloved official He, your son, He Jinwei, was very embarrassed. Your Majesty, my son is too excited. Really, he was like this before he fought with people who were stronger than him. In fact, it was not so exaggerated before really. But, did he dare to say this? He didn't dare to at all. Hearing his general say that his son was strong, Lu Chengdi was happy in his heart and didn't care about other things. He Zhihai, what are you doing in a daze? Hurry up and greet the emperor. He Jinwei roared. He Zhihai finally came to his senses. People like He Zhihai didn't know what embarrassment was. He just greeted the emperor by the book. At a glance, it was obvious that he hadn't learned the rules for a long time and was stiff and inflexible. After that, his eyes lit up. Your Majesty, can we start? Lu Chengdi nodded sadly. Then, in the blink of an eye, he rushed to his son. He really couldn't wait. He turned to look at He Jinwei. Beloved official He, you were right. Not to mention his obsession with martial arts, his temperament was really unbearable. Without weapons, they fought with fists and feet. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6654122. HTML. Please click here to report. No registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken.com mobile version reading website, mbicken.com. That you're tuning in to the Echo Reads YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.